What's up, everyone? Can somebody send me a quick DM? Let me know you can actually hear me. Can I make sure my settings are fine too? I don't know if they are yet. Let's find out. Okay. Let's see here. Could somebody just give me a thumbs up that you guys can hear me? Just want to make sure you guys are hearing me before I start rambling on. Because I should have probably had a. That sounded good. I heard something start there. Okay, good. All right. So let's set the stage here for you guys a little bit. Hold on one moment. So just a couple quick logistical notes as we get going. This is the first space I've ever done. So odds are I'll screw something up along the way, but I hope I don't. But we'll just keep that in mind. Certainly, I have my DMs open in the window, in the event that something is amiss. So just send me a quick DM when some of you guys are friends with me on DMs. Mency and Big Red have already messaged me earlier today. So with tips and tricks for spaces so I don't screw it up. But, so anyway, there's that. Also, I mean, I feel like we're going to have pretty good attendance on this. I don't know if I'll get to everybody who wants to speak, but I'll do my best. I'm also probably not going to pick you if I don't know you that well. So, don't be offended about that, but also don't be offended if I do not pick you, because it probably just means I didn't get to you, for any reason. I just don't want this to become a chaotic free-for-all as well. Let's be also respectful. I am a representative of Iona University in a lot of ways, so I'm not here to open up a let's bash Iona for 2 hours session here either. So all of that said, I think we can get the ball rolling, but just to give you, if I do cut somebody off for something, it probably means I hung up on you by accident or something like that. So again, take nothing that goes wrong here personally today, because I am not as tech savvy as many. I'll just say that. With that all out of the way, I think we can get started here. And I have a little opening monologue, if you let me set the table for us here. So let's rewind a couple of years ago. Some guy named Rick Pitino is just killing Tom and Iona before he can land at St. John's. So the national media can perform journalistic fellatio on him. And in his final year, he got the halftime lead against almighty UConn before hopping in the limo at halftime to head to Jamaica. Rick takes 3 Gales with him to St. John's. And oh, by the way, any NIL we had at the time, Tobin Anderson is hired fresh off upsetting Purdue with FDU and the NCAAs, but all Rick left behind was a bag of balls, no NIL, and Osborne Shema. So Tobin did what he could last year, limited NIL, put together a team that just never really found its footing. Saw its best player, Greg Gordon, quit with like 3 weeks to go in the season. Iona finished the game under 500. This year, NIL was a little better. Tobin was able to assemble a tougher group of kids suited for what he wanted to do for his system and his style. Was not able to retain any players from last year's team, and as such had to get 13 new guys. So that's basically 2 years in a row of an entire new roster. As you would expect this year, did not get off to a great start. It's certainly not easy to just take 13 guys, throw them together and say, go out and win games. So 13 guys, it was not going to start well. And I've been saying that all along. I've been saying that since April, that we were not going to start the year off that well. But I also said that the MAC is not a very powerful league. It's pretty, I think we actually exceeded my expectations a little bit. I think we ended up 25th or so in KenPom, which is a little higher than I expected. But the league's not strong. So we were going to kind of catch up, and as we started to find our footing, we would find our ground in MAC play. So that's kind of how I went into the year with that in mind. But, we got to mid-January though, and this team was 4-10. And then on top of that, we then said farewell, and goodbye to highly regarded D2 transfer Biggie Patterson, who had multiple run-ins with Tobin during his brief time with the Gales. So things were kind of a mess, without a doubt. Right about that time, though, is when the rumblings started, just to give you guys some historical perspective. Let me say this also. There's been a lot of questions about this on the Iona board, on the Mac board, on Twitter. I've kind of known about a lot of this for a while. I just didn't really see it playing out this way, which is why I never made a fuss about it. So like I said, the rumblings started way back in January, when things were really bad, or maybe second week or so. Some of the larger donors were not happy. This might be Tobin's last year. I paid no mind to it. It was January. I actually expected it and predicted us to turn things around for the reasons I gave you, that the Mac's just not a great league. Second time around, we'll do better. The guys are getting used to being with each other, all that. And on top of that, who the hell fires a coach after 2 years anyway? You generally get 3 years, as we all kind of know. Anyway, from that point, Iona did turn things around. We won 6 of 7 at one point, and I was still hearing rumblings that Tobin was going to be let go. So we progressed to the final weeks of the regular season, and sure enough, Iona wins its last 3 games, clinches the Final Four seed. Our best player, Day Reeves, announces on senior day he's returning to the Gales next year for his final year of eligibility. The team has all this momentum heading into the MAC tournament, and still leading up to that first game of the MAC tournament, I heard chatter that Tobin was going to be gone. How can that possibly be? So I asked the question of multiple people and different areas of administration, and among the donors, who would have had knowledge of what was going on with these discussions. And I asked this one really clear question. What if he wins the whole damn thing? I got a bunch of I don't knows in response, which to me was like, all right, well, they really means they really didn't decide anything. This is all still just a lot of talk. So Iona then now really peaking going into this past week, entering MAC tourney. They played maybe their 2 best games of the year. They beat Manhattan by double figures in what was really a coin flip game, 4-5 game, and then beat number 1 seed Quinnipiac somewhat comfortably, and then getting to the finals. So we're all feeling good about the program. I'm getting my phone's blowing up, great texts, and still I'm hearing chatter that he's going to get loco. How could this possibly be? We're on the brink of a title. This is stupid. Surely that was enough to end all chatter, but I guess not. With all of this, all the goodwill that Tobin had built up in the last few weeks was not enough. Mount beats us up in the final. We can go into that as much as we want. It's almost like an afterthought now that we actually lost the MAC final. And here we are less than 48 hours later and Tobin is out. Just what in the hell are we doing? Now, I'm going to go back a second now. I understand why the convo started happening back in early January. We were not doing well. We were coming off a sub 500 year the year before. Again, we were 4-10. At this point, 2 guys who got what at this level, at our MAC level, is significant NIL, flamed out of the program. It just wasn't looking good. And I had heard some other rumblings about Tobin being difficult to deal with and all some other stuff and some of the players and but you hear that every year. So some of that, again, it's just, I kind of just put it aside. But surely if the year went on that way, we finished well under 500 and bowed out in the MAC play-in game round for the second straight year. Yeah, I think at this point we would still be like, wow, 2 years really? But we would be like, yeah, he's kind of really hasn't really done the job. The problem though, is that those initial conversations with potential replacement coaches went back in early January, went much further along than one would think, and probably that they should have. These weren't kind of like, hey, we might make a move at the end of the season. If you're interested, we'd love to have you. This was beyond that. Not necessarily contracts, but actual initial paperwork in play. So we kind of trapped ourselves a little bit because we were kind of committing to somebody in January. And it was getting this far along because it just wasn't expected that Tobin would turn this around. Well, Tobin flipped the bird to everybody, basically. They did turn it around. It's naive to assume that we weren't going to, because you just can't take 13 guys and be good on day one. It just doesn't happen. Anybody who knows the game knows this and understood it. And it's something that I've been trying to sell to Iona fans since last April, that just because we got players we want, that we spent some money in NIL, doesn't mean we're going to be good on November 4th. It just wasn't going to happen. It's just not the way it works in reality. And you wonder what would happen if some of those initial conversations were more along the lines of, hey, let's talk again in a couple of weeks and see where we're at, and all that, rather than, hey, let's put something down on paper that you might be coming to be our coach. So it was kind of a backwards way of getting to that point. And then, whammo, we won 6 of 7. Now what do we do? So here we are. So now kind of level setting a little more. The Iona message board and Iona Twitter are all, and rightfully so, are all in shock and disappointment that this move has been made. Quite frankly, I'm a friend and fan of Tobin's at this point, and certainly given all the reasons I noted earlier, that third year should have happened. The money guys at Iona can try to justify the move, and they have reasons, and I've heard a lot of them now. Still feels like based on potentially delusions of being something more than we are, if you ask me, but money talks, and we'll see where that lands. So Iona fans are a wildly spoiled bunch for this level, for sure. We all know that there's a lot of delusional fan bases out there, and Iona, when you've won as much as Iona has won, yes, I know no NCAA wins, but I mean, think about how good Iona's been the last 15 years, going from Tim Cluess, and then you bring in Rick Pitino. I mean, Iona fans have just been on top of the world. It's just a given that you're in a title mix every year, and that you're in the NCAA tournament right now, booking your travel, not, watching Mount play. So really though, when you think about when Rick left, and, it's easy to sit and blame Rick for everything, but Tobin never had a chance. Let's face it. Even though against all odds, and you're learning on the fly how to navigate the wild west that is college hoops with NIL and the portal going bonkers, putting us in a position for success in year 3 is still, for which we are positioned until today happened, positioned for success in year 3 is pretty damn good. And so, Tobin hit a really, really difficult and nearly impossible situation of following Rick Pitino, and still was able to kind of fix the mess and at least get us positioned for year 3. And that wasn't enough. So with that, the portaling is now underway. We've seen Adam Jai, DeJour Reeves, Justin Menard go in, maybe others that I've missed already. I don't know, but those 3 for sure, are now in, have said they've hit the transfer button. I suspect we'll see much of the same from just about everybody in the rest of the roster, but who knows? Someone might just say, screw it, I'll say, pull an Osborne Shema and say, I'll stay at Iona. I like it, Iona. I'm going to stay there. Who knows? I will say this. I know it's also assumed that the commits we had for next year are all gone, but that is not the case for DeAndre Lindsay, the 4-star forward from Oak Hill. My understanding is that Tobin was not super involved in his recruitment, and yet he committed anyway. If anything, that's further evidence that there were all kinds of behind the scenes moves going on in recent weeks. So yes, we had a player commit to us that Tobin really wasn't even involved recruiting. So this was done with the almost idea that Tobin wasn't going to be part of this. So, and now that's not to say that if Tobin were staying that Lindsay would not come here. I don't know, but that's not even a conversation for now. So where are we with the program right now? So there are a few people and administrators involved in all of this, but the one name that might be spearheading a lot of this change is Dan Doyle. He's a former Iona point guard from the 1990s who is now on university's board of trustees. Doyle has reportedly donated, honestly, this is not an exaggeration, millions of dollars to Iona, steering much of that toward the basketball program to secure general management of and fill the coffers of Iona's NIL, and also cover Tobin's buyout. Now, if the Doyle name sounds a little familiar beyond the Iona Doyle, he's the brother of CBS Sports analyst and former Northwestern player Tim Doyle. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon later, we have an NBA assistant on our front door in New Rochelle. How about that? But all of that said, this wasn't just Doyle, and I know that name has been thrown around in some Iona circles, that this is Doyle's doing, la la la. It was a unified effort from the more usual cast of characters among Iona's trustees. And I'm not going to name them all here, but all the names you're used to hearing over the years that have been significant donors to Iona athletics were involved with this. This is not a one-man show. Also, let me debunk this now. I saw some tweets and posts suggesting that Dan Jerrio's dad had something to do with him coming on to Iona, which that announcement will be forthcoming. I can tell you now that is not true. And again, I'm very, very close to the people involved in the situation. I'm telling you that is not true. So we will have all of season to dig into what the future holds for Iona basketball with Dan G, as he's already being called from Iona people, at the helm. But tonight, I do want to talk more about Tobin Anderson. Again, he's become a friend of mine. I'm sad, very sad today. And I'm saying this again before I get into anything else. I don't think this was the right move at this time, but I'm not one of the big donors, so I don't get to have a say. I'm not one of the trustees. But anyway, as I've heard these rumors over the past couple of weeks, I kept asking the question, are we really going to let Tobin go, not retain any players, start over from scratch again with a completely new guy? I'm not going to critique what our new coach may or may not know or how good he's going to be. I know there's a lot of flustered folks out there looking at his G League record and making assumptions based on that. That's not apples to oranges. You can't do that. It's a completely different world. But I just don't think it matters here. But it is still a gamble. We're talking about somebody who has not coached at the D1 level as a head coach, and what could easily be, once again, 13 new guys. We just saw twice in a row how tough it is to blend entire rosters together. Are we really in a better spot than what we would have been if Tobin stuck around with Day and the recruiting class we had coming in at minimum, never mind perhaps maybe Jai sticking around and Menard? Are we in a better position? The answer is no. It's almost, I don't know who we're going to get in the portal. There's apparently going to be all kinds of money going into the portal. But I will say this, it's still awfully tough to blend 13 guys together who have never played together. And so I would not, while the talent level might go up and maybe up considerably, you still have to coach. So there's going to be a lot to see there, and we'll have to see how that turns out. Again, that's more of a comment for the other day. I do wish we could have seen what would have happened in year 3 of the Tobin era. I get it. We're changing. If you look at the Iona press release, we said we're changing our model, basically just setting up ourselves better for, the financial nature of today's college basketball world. And that's fine. I actually don't disagree with that. Maybe could have just really brought on a GM instead and really had somebody help manage that aspect of it, but that's neither here nor there. It's just such a gamble to do all of this when the table was set for next year. But anyway, like I said, tonight's about Tobin. It's fair to say that, he is being capable. He is very capable of being what Iona wanted. It's sad we're not going to get to find out. I really did get to enjoy him and his family. They're really good people. I'm sure they're going to land on their feet. Tobin is getting a nice buyout. He will land on his feet and end up with coaching somewhere else. His staff are all great guys as well. They did what they could in the situation they were given. It wasn't enough. And it just was the absolute worst time, to be involved between following Rick Pitino and then coming into this new era of the game with the portal and NIL just tearing basketball into Wild West. So anyway, so the guys are hitting the portal and here we are. I did text with Tobin a good part of today. He's stunned. He's angry. He's really disappointed and I really feel for him. So it all kind of sucks. It was kind of a shock that this all happened. But is it the best move? Time will tell. We're trying to set up ourselves to be a lot more than just Iona of the MAC. The question I have is, where were we when Rick Pitino was here and was talking about trying to get us into the A10? Certainly some of that money that I'm hearing about now could have helped with that transition. But again, this is all what ifs, and now we're in reality. So there's all of that. All right. So I wanted to get all that out because I know about 95% of tweets and posts and DMs and texts are all like, WTF? Why would they do this now after getting into the finals, looking so promising? And I'm going to wrap up this opening monologue with this. Every indication right now suggests that we are going to be doing this after Iona's season ended, even if that were in the NCAAs. Can you believe that? Look at the backlash we're getting right now. Imagine if Iona had beaten Mount and then beat American on Wednesday night and then just, bowed out to Duke in a tough game on Friday and they canned Tobin on Sunday because that's what we were heading toward. How do you explain that? But every indication is that's exactly what would have happened. Unreal. So I leave with that point that this certainly sounds like it was going to happen no matter what, which is insanity to me. But at the same and saddening and makes me upset because again, I care for Tobin and I feel like he maybe gotten shortchanged here, and I'm not the only one that feels the way by any means, but the people that are doing that are insisting that we were doing it with the best interest of Iona basketball in mind. time will tell if that is the case. So now that I've said all of that, again, I'm going to remind everybody before I start to open up some conversations here for you guys. Again, I'm a representative of Iona University. I've been on the Iona board of directors. A lot of people know who I am. I don't want you to come on here and just throw some curse-filled tirade at us right now if I, grant you access to speak. This is not what this is about. Certainly share your thoughts. Do so in an intelligent format. And again, if I don't know who you are, I'm not going to grant you access. Just so thankfully I'm seeing a lot of names that I know. So, I will now take a look and see who I can get to speak. I know I gave Adam already access to speak. Adam, can you unmute and say something? Just make sure that.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you for
There you
having
are.
me.
Go ahead, Adam. Share
Yeah,
your thoughts.
absolutely. So I saw this news when I was in class, and just like everyone else, I was just really shocked at, seeing the tweet from John Rothstein, and then, the great, Sam Fetterman talked about it, and all of the Iona people talked about it, all the reporters talked about it. Some of my friends in studio media, they were talking about it, and it was really just from this, Coach Tobin is one of my favorite coaches in the game. Obviously we know him from the Fairleigh Dickinson days, and he coached at a local school near me. I go to Quinnipiac, but I'm about 30 minutes my hometown from New Rochelle, the Iona campus. Very nice campus, by the way. And yeah, and obviously just looking into it, doing a little bit more like research on like why this could happen. It just obviously seems that Iona, they want to kind of shift in the direction of, the ever changing landscape of college basketball, which is obviously, transfer portal, NIL, donors, like how much money can you really use to build up your team and really compete. But just my rebuttal to that is to me, it just feels like NIL doesn't really guarantee you. It doesn't even guarantee you like a MAC championship, in my opinion. And like we see it even on the major level. Look how much Kansas State paid for their roster. Look how much they paid for Coleman Hawkins, and now he ends his college career, his Kansas State career in tears. Look at how much IU paid for a guy like Omar Ballo, and then he's calling out the fans for death threats and all that stuff. And I just feel like you have your majors, you have your blue bloods, you have Kentucky, you have your Duke and all that stuff, and you have your mid majors like a Quinnipiac, like an Iona, stuff like that. So I just feel like if they're saying that, we want to shift with the landscape of college basketball, and they want to kind of, beef up the NIL and kind of build through that way. I just don't see how that's going to really change anything, because obviously, as you know, the MAC only lets in 10 teams to Atlantic City. And, a lot of teams that were, top heavy in the MAC the year before that, before the expansion, they're scraping for spots. That 10 seed was really getting close with a lot of different teams that might have done well without the expansion. So again, like, I just don't think that the NIL really even guarantees you like a MAC championship, because there was a stat, and I don't know if this stat remains true. I'm sure people can correct me on this, but the MAC was I think had like the closest games of the entire country, like, and anyone could win those games, and games were going back and forth and things like that. And Iona, who I think finished 12-8 in the MAC, they could have easily gone 14-6 or something like that. So, the margins are just so slim. And, I'm a firm believer in just like, you gotta give at least 3 years to coaches or regimes to really like, figure out like if they're really fit for the long-term future, or if you need to let them go. And obviously it just sucks that Tobin wasn't given that year. We saw the improvement of the second half of the MAC season, obviously leading Iona to the championship game. And obviously they came up a little short, obviously beating my Quinnipiac Bobcats and others along the way. And if we look at coaching to me, I think, is a results-based business. What have you done for me lately? Well, obviously Tobin coming in with nobody from Patino's regime. He has to build the team. Then none of those guys come back, and then he gets, I would say, decent players like Jajir Reeves. You have Adam Jai, one of my favorite players. All these other great players. And he leads into a MAC championship. And if it's a results based business, what have you done for me lately? He led Iona, who not a lot of people, the top three in the MAC, Marist, Quinnipiac, um, and Merrimack. Those were the teams I was seeing winning the MAC in the bracketology in the first four, not even Mount St. Mary's, like those teams, right? So Iona, then they get back to their winning ways. They go to the championship game, and it's really shocking that this happened, and I know other people will give their thoughts as well from other schools or with the Iona program. It's just really, really shocking to me that if it's a results based business, what have you done for me lately? Well, not only did he lead Iona in a really topsy turvy year to the MAC championship, one game away from NCAA tournament, back to the great success that they've had, but also obviously a couple years before that, the 2 year anniversary today, which is just really cruel, beating Purdue, the number one seed, and then one of the greatest upsets in history. So, I mean, I just don't, I guess they don't really see that. I guess they want to go in a different direction, get a guy from the NBA. In my opinion, professionals don't really transition well into college game. And then in college game, like I think of John Beeline, for example, when he left Michigan to coach the Cavs, they, the Cavs just were not good. And then obviously they got a new coach. So yeah, really tough. I know one of my best friends here at school, and also I went to high school with. He knows the family very well. We talked for a while. He was very shocked about the news. And it's just interesting to see what they do. But I think I'll leave with this. I think what really is telling to me is how the players reacted, because coaches leave, and some players have run-ins with coaches. Some players they they may have a lot of disagreements with coaches, and that's why they transfer, even if the coach doesn't get fired, even if the regime doesn't leave. But the fact that you have guys like Day Reeves, talk about he committed for the next year, obviously, as we all know. Day Reeves saying like this is crazy. Jalen Barr saying it's crazy. Like Adam and Jai. I've really felt for him because, obviously he's a four-star. It's so many different opportunities to go elsewhere, Arizona State, different schools like that. But no, he decided to choose Iona, obviously for the moments like, beating Quinnipiac and, bringing the history back, bringing the winning back, but obviously to play with Coach Tobin. So I think that's what's really telling to me is just how the players reacted. And then obviously you're seeing the exodus and going in the portal, Day Reeves going in the portal. All these, other teams are going to pick up some real studs in the transfer portal. And I just think that if Tobin were given the chance, he would get guys like Adam Jai, roster turnover, like different things like that. So yeah, really upsetting, just because I love Tobin, love watching him coach, and love his style. But if it was really just like in the inner workings, and this was going along behind everyone's back, and people with closer to the program knew what was happening, then then that reassures me that yes, it is a business at the end of the day, and there's no really loyalty in this game. Anything can happen on the flip of a dime. So thank you guys so
Yeah.
much for giving me the chance and to speak. And obviously, as someone that's not very familiar with the program, I appreciate giving me you guys giving me the chance to show my perspective on things, and I'm interested to see what everyone else thinks. So thank you guys.
Yeah, no problem. And I just a couple of notes I wanted to throw in. Yeah, like Anessa, we talked about earlier how 3 years is kind of the standard, but that is kind of evolving now in this era where more money's at stake. People want to see results sooner, and we're seeing that right now as evidence of that. But there's been other signs of that as well. The other thing is, somebody asked me like, what was the goal of this, and you might have even mentioned that too during that stretch there. And the answer is I don't know. The reason I say that again is because we're in an era right now where the Atlantic 10 only got one team in the tournament. The Missouri Valley only got one team in the tournament. The AAC only got one team in the tournament. Is there really a benefit to moving up? What are you going to get? One more seed line up? I mean, if we go to like the Coastal Athletic, or if we really do find a whole lot of money and go to the A10, I mean, it's not a wise move. That said, I mean, is the MAC ever going to see something above a 15 again? I don't know. I don't know either in this. So, so I'm not sure what the plan is. I imagine the plan is if there is going to be that much money involved, that there'll be some sort of a move upward, but maybe if we have some huge alignment shift again in conferences, that might open a door for I don't know, an A10 light, which again doesn't really get you any more extra seat spots in the NCAAs too much anymore. But it's hard to answer that question. But I know that the goals are very lofty for what they want this program to be, obviously just by the dollar amounts that you're hearing. And the question is whether that is delusional thinking or not is another conversation. So thanks again for chiming in. Fairfield Frank, join us. Have some fun here.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks for letting me on. Yeah, I want to say a couple things, and then I've actually got a question for you on kind of the go forward too. But overall, when Tobin was hired, in my personal opinion, and I think we probably spoke about this, is the missing piece for Iona was winning that NCAA game, right? And that's something Tobin did at his last stop. So, I like the hire, but one of the things that I was worried about, and I think I've said it with you, and I could try to dig up some tweets about, is are these guys going to have patience, right? You got to build a program. You got to try to like make something happen. A lot of times, and I've said this, the comparison before is like, Iona is very close to the Bronx, right? Like it's like being a Yankees fan, right? If you're not winning the World Series, who cares? Like you got to be winning. It's not good enough making the championship. It's not good enough making the playoffs. If you don't win the World Series, who cares anymore? And I'm talking like a, late 90s, early 2000s kid, but you know what I'm saying. And that's kind of the Iona mentality. And ultimately, obviously, they weren't patient enough with him. And my thing is, and I look internally, right, because there's some crossroads at Fairfield as well that people are upset. But, I look at two things when you look at moving on from a coach. One being regression of the team from year to year, and two being not adapting to the program, like to your program and to the league and to the times. So like regression, you can't even complain about Tobin. Like he was seventh place, 10 wins. I'm sure he was bounced in the quarterfinals last year, but he didn't have the roster to take him to the place he wanted to be and play the style he wanted to play. This year, fourth place, obviously he beat, 12 MAC wins, beat the number one seed in the semifinals, made it to the finals, was up at halftime. So like not even like one game away, like 10 minutes away from making the NCAA tournament. So that's the craziest part for me. And with your monologue, you said this was kind of, written on the wall already before those games were played, but that part of it's crazy. And I'll speak to the adapting side a little bit too. And this resonates for me, and I don't mean to bring it back to, myself and our program, but like, Sidney Johnson came in with a Princeton offense and he was stubborn at first and took too long to adapt. Tobin changed his style, and Coach Gall in his press conference after the 4-5 matchup of Manhattan spoke about how Tobin is changing the way he plays games. He wants a lot of possessions in his style. He went under 70 possessions, and when he was under 70 possessions, he advanced, I think, 13-6 versus being, I forget the under 500 record he had over 70 possessions. So adapting is a huge thing, and there's a side of it on the court, and there's a side of it with the roster. You mentioned in your monologue, you went through and tried to bring in tougher players, bring in players that fit Tobin's style, and I thought they did. I mean, it was a very talented roster this year, and you have nothing to be ashamed about. It's kind of crazy for me for those reasons why he was out. Like you said, money will prevail. And so I'll pause there and I'll let you kind of comment on that, but I have one other thing for you.
No, I mean, and that's just it. I mean, it's just so hard to put your finger on what the right expectation is. And again, I think for those who are outside of the Iona universe, and you look at even national media is like appalled that we did this. But again, when you're Iona and you're so used to winning, what's the right thing? I've always kind of been that guy and everybody who knows me on the Iona board, and Iona Twitter knows I try to do this. When fans get down, I try to lift them up. But when the fans get a little too cocky, I try to bring them back down to earth. And this is one of those times where I kind of say, hey, I mean, I tell you right now, and I mentioned Dan Doyle. I mean, I think one of his goals is to see Iona in the top 50. I mean, can you even do that in the MAC? I mean, Patino couldn't do it. And we had a really tough non-conference schedule. We won 1 million MAC games. And the best I think he got to it was like the 60s. And then on top of all that, he did the unthinkable by losing. I mean, this is Rick Pitino losing as a 1 seed in the first round to 8-seeded Ryder and Kevin Baggett, who of course is subject of jokes on another Twitter space that I'll be going on later tonight. So, I mean, it's so hard to just say what you should really expect, even as an Iona fan. And I mean, I can't put my finger on it, but I'm also not I guess I'm maybe a little more objective than a lot of Iona fans are, where I could say, geez, I mean, we're not some magical special place with, pixie dust and fairies that we should be ordained to go to the NCAAs every year. It's okay that we had a couple of seasons that weren't perfect, especially when we look at what was what could have happened next year should, if Tobin were coming back. And if, I don't know what Adam Jai was going to do for sure. I've heard both sides of that Adam was going to come back. Oh, no, he's not coming back. His handler said he's leaving. He's out of there. But, I've heard both sides of that. So I don't even know what the truth is there. It doesn't even matter because with Reeves back and with the core guys back and with the recruits coming in, they were positioned to be top 1, 2 in the MAC next year. Easy.
Yeah. I'm glad you, oh, sorry.
But,
I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's another big piece. Like you look at the future, right? You look at what happens next and, Reeves announcing on senior day coming back and the 2 top 150 recruits and a top, 60 JUCO player, right? Like it's crazy some of the momentum they had going into next year. I mean, he was primed to really just build around that and have a really good roster. And it's crazy. And like that leads to my second question, guys. Like, so, I look at enrollment from 10 years ago and I look at the enrollment now. It's not very different. Actually, it looks a little less than 10 years ago. And I know with these universities how there's such a large margin of that money that goes back to the school and helps, other aspects of college. Like what, with such I would assume it's a large buyout, right? Like he's year 2 of probably a 4-year deal. And he was making good money. Like, first of all, like, how are they positioned to do something like that? 1, and 2, like, how is the school positioned in general? Like, I know we talk about these big money guys and everything. Everybody loves to talk about the money guys, right? But like, from a school's perspective, like, just looking on the outside, and I know they acquired in the last few years, like, I think a nursing school or something down the road to try to expand the campus and get more kids and all that great stuff. But, financially as a school, like, how are they doing this? Is it really just the funding of these donors that's providing men's basketball the necessities of NIL and others that they need to like keep advancing? Cause, I question that a lot just cause it's not a huge enrollment. It's not a growing enrollment. It's not, and I don't know because I'm not in it like you are, but I'm curious how they're positioned coming out of like a big buyout like this,
Yeah. I mean, I know that there are schools in the MAC that are truly struggling financially. You're even wondering how they're keeping the doors open a little bit. Iona is definitely not among that. I know there are also schools in the MAC that have some money to burn. So we're not there either, but we're well positioned. But, I think, and again, I'll use the situation of Dan Doyle. He's relatively new, only the last couple of years. He's been a trustee, and has of course, being a former player, has the interest and the financial wherewithal to say, oh, I want Iona to be more than this. I want it to be bigger. So I'm willing to stake my funds into making Iona something much more than anybody could have ever thought it would be, which is great in theory. Is the infrastructure there to see that kind of level of program? I don't know. I would settle for just being where we were during the Tim Cluess years. And hopefully the rest of the MAC can find its footing and we can get back to where we were. But in this age of the portal, when we saw it the last 2 years, you and I, the MAC just gets absolutely raided. And 15 of the 16, all conference players are gone every year because they either transferred or graduated, and we're starting again with a bunch of freshmen. And so, it's a lofty goal. I just don't know how attainable it is. Iona is in good standing, better than most in the MAC, but not better than all by any means. All right. So before I move on here, I want to point out, this is one of those, Twitter space newbie things. I cannot figure out for the life of me how to scroll down to see there's a bunch of people requesting to speak. I can only see like the top one. Is there a way for me to scroll down this list? If somebody can DM me and tell me that would be very helpful.
There should be. And if there's people you don't want, I think you could decline too. It might push some people
up. No, that I know. But like I see like request to speak and I clicked on it. And like, for instance, right now I see Sam Fetterman on top of the list, but I see either of the requests. But
here's EVD.
Go Sam Fetterman.
There, I put on EVD. So EVD, jump in there and share some thoughts. But if somebody can answer that question now with EVD moved up to the speakers list, I can't see anything in request to speak.
I'll leave, Guy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. Adam, if you can drop out too, that would help.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Guy, I appreciate you having me on today. Just, wanted to start with, pretty shocked about the news. Beginning of the year didn't go exactly how Iona wanted to, neither did year one. Kind of felt like, hey, is this team really going to figure it out? They had 13 new guys at the end of the day. So, you had to give them a little bit of time. And then they had the troubles that I don't know too much about with Biggie Patterson. They let him off the team. Then you're wondering, hey, are they still going to figure this out? They turned around their season completely. I think they won 10 of their last 14. They were rolling. They were beating some of the bigger teams, like some of the teams at the top of the conference. Things were feeling right. The team was clicking. They stopped pressing all game. They weren't turning the ball over left and right. I think Tobin Anderson proved that he was a more than capable coach. With all the changes that he made, adding Menard into the starting lineup as well, really, fixed the offense. A lot of their turnover problems, kind of calmed down the chaoticness of the actual roster. Obviously they didn't get over the hump in the championship game, but I just think, everything he did earned him a year 3. You had Reeves on senior day saying that he was coming back for next year. I think all of the momentum you built up there, he at least earned a shot at year number 3. If they don't win it next year and, you want to go somewhere else,
Right.
Sure. I think you need to at least give him that 3rd year at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's very fair. And, like I said, if we weren't positioned for it, I could see, all right, well, if we went on this year and won, 14 games and, the day after the MAC tournament loss or whatever, Day hits the portal and Jai hits the portal. Then it's like, all right, well, here we go again. Maybe we need to make a change. That would have made sense. But the way the last 2 months went and then getting Day to say he's coming back to get some of the recruits we landed, it just felt like it was, it was too premeditated and, they didn't, and again, I don't even know at the end of, I'm sure that those who made this decision feel they made the right decision. I'm also wondering how curious they would be if they had just let it be for a year, what would happen. All right. Let's move on. I've got I'm starting to figure out this here. All right. Let's get a couple of Iona voices in here and I'm going to start with, oh boy, I may regret this one. Tucker Anderson is going to join us right now. And yes, that's Tobin's brother, for those who don't know. Tucker, fire away, man. Please watch your language. You may have to adjust your mic. Make sure you pick the right mic. Oh, now you just popped in. See if you can speak now.
All right, you got me now?
There we go. What's up, man?
Hey, nothing. I'm sure guys like, oh God, do I got to do this? And click on me. No, I'm good. I just wanted to thank all you guys. It's been a tough run with my family. As you probably know, Tobin's my older brother. And, just you guys have had unwavering support for him today on Twitter and everything else and the kind words. And I just want to say thank you guys. Guy, you've been phenomenal. I loved your monologue coming into this. It was great. And yeah, I'm not here to pick a fight with anybody. I've got a lot of emotion today, with my family, but I just want to say thanks to everybody. You guys have been very kind and, it means a lot.
All right. Thanks a lot for that. Sam has been waiting. Sam Fetterman, our Mac, one of our Mac gurus here, is going to chime in with some thoughts. Go ahead, Sam.
Look, I was doing my own show, so I didn't hear everything you had to say. But the thing that kind of caught me was, like you said, I'd settle for like going back to like what Iona was during the Tim Cluse years. Like even that, can we understand how hard it is to do what Tim Cluse did? He made 6 NCAA tournaments. That's not you can't just hire a coach and expect that to happen.
Right.
You have.
I did mean, just to clarify though, I did mean that more as of our ratings where we were, because even during, there's some of the early Tim years they were top 100, but the rest of the time they were more like 130, 150. So that's kind of what I meant.
And at the end of the day, that's really hard to do if you're not retaining talent at the mid-major level.
Oh, I agree.
And nobody's doing that in our conference. Quinnipiac did it this year. Merrimack did it this year. Marist did it this year. Those guys finished top 3, but like they retained what? Like 4 or 5 guys each? Nobody's retaining whole rosters anymore. But look at who did. Towson, and they win their league. Eastern Kentucky last year, and they won their league. It's the fact that I have to go back to last year to find a team that did it. It's just really difficult to find teams that are retaining a ton of talent. And Klus was also a coach that knew how to use the transfers before the portal was a big deal. So
Yep.
So he could add talent to rosters when he was losing talent. And I think he was very, very good at finding the right pieces. Tim Klus isn't walking through that door. I mean, if he is, which he's not, like, by all means, but like, you're not finding Tim Klus. You're not going to get back to that by hiring somebody. The way to get back to that is by giving a coach time to succeed, by giving a coach time to build a culture, by giving a coach time to prove that he can be successful at Iona, not by giving a coach 2 years and saying, all right, screw it. Cause what's to say this doesn't happen again in 2 more years. And we keep doing this every 2 years.
Correct.
I feel at what point do people stop taking if Gario doesn't last at least 4 years, like nobody's going to want to take the job when he's gone.
That's true.
Unless he goes up from it.
Right. No, that's true. And I did say some things like that in my open to just to show that there's alignment there. Yeah, I mean, it's a gamble. And I said that earlier on. We have a known situation going into next year where with Tobin, with hopefully retaining some guys, Day already committing and all of that, the table was set to have a pretty good year next year. How high or how, we don't know. We just don't know. But
I mean, I
we didn't get to find out.
I thought that if they brought back Day and if they brought back Yafet Mundi, they would be a preseason top 3 team in the MAC.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
and then you bring back, and if they were somehow able to bring back Adam as well, it would be hard to say that they're not the preseason number 1.
Yeah. I have a source who told me that at Adam, called Day and said he wanted to come back. And I also have a source that said, Day was never coming back. I'm sorry, Adam was never coming back. So
yeah,
I don't know the truth, and I don't even care what the truth is anymore because he's gone anyway. But
I've kind of.
But like you said, assuming that even if he's gone, you still have Day and Mundi and a core, and you would have been in good shape.
Yeah, and like you can build a roster around that. That's something that Tobin hasn't been able to do the last couple of years. And the last time he had a core to build the roster around was when he brought Sean Moore, Grant Singleton, and Dimitri Roberts from St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah. All right. Let's get some of the voice. Thanks, Sam, as always. And we'll catch up with you in the summer, I'm sure. So appreciate you coming on. All right, let's go to Sidelines Iona.
Hey, thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. Pretty, difficult day in a lot of ways for all of us. But, interesting in some ways, in some respect as well. I noticed, a lot of people are focused on the amount of time Tobin has had and they don't feel it's fair. They feel like, he should have been given more. And reading the press release, I didn't get the sense that Iona's making a change because they don't think Tobin's a good coach. If you take the release at its face value, they're essentially saying we have to move in a new direction and create a new economic model, essentially, in order for us to maintain a competitive program. And if you're Iona's administration, Dr. Carey, and you have somebody who's willing to fund your basketball program at a competitive level for the next few years, especially during a time when there's expected to be, decreased enrollment, it seems like a prudent thing to do. Now, we all like Tobin. He's a good guy. He's a good coach. And, we all feel like this is unfair, and we're all emotional, and that makes sense. But I also just want to focus on that press release. And, if you believe it to be true, what they're saying kind of makes sense. It doesn't seem fair, but at least I understand why they're doing it. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
No, and you're right. The way it was worded, they never said, he didn't meet the goals of our program or anything like that. It's truly that they are restructuring what they want to do to take on the financial climate of our sport. And, again, I think there's an easier way to transition to kind of go cold turkey and say, let's bring in an NBA guy. Maybe it's a GM first, and then you see how that works out. Somebody who's really got a savvy business mind, because I do think that they have had questions about how Tobin handled NIL, again, especially with the way things went with Greg Gordon and with Biggie. But all right. So then plug somebody in to handle that at a much higher level and just let Tobin be Tobin and go from there. I don't know why that wasn't an option, but I think they're just trying to build something. And again, here's the thing. And I said this in my opening, more or less I said this. I mean, if next year, they go out and they spend a bunch of money in the portal, they get a team together and they win 13 games, everybody's going to say, boy, what a mistake that was. And in a way, they'd be right. But I know that the plan is bigger than that. It's not for next year. They're openly sacrificing next year for the future of basketball, but that doesn't guarantee that 5 years from now, Iona is going to be able to replace. And
no.
I think Sam was right with what he said. If Dan Gregorio is probably going to be named coach tomorrow, if he's not up to the task, are they going to can him in 2 years and we're doing this all over again? I don't know.
So there's no guarantees.
There's no guarantee about it. And that's why a slower transition to that model would have made more sense to me. Have business guys get more involved, as much as Tobin would have let them, because I know Tobin is probably protective of his program. And if I actually have that personality too, I wouldn't want somebody looking over my shoulder with a wallet saying, this is how we're going to do this because my money says so.
Right.
So I agree with that. And I'd be like, this is my program. Get the hell out of my way. So I totally understand that aspect of it. That said, if you have somebody who you trust next to you, who's managing that aspect of the program, it probably would have been a smoother transition than what they did, and a safer one, because they would have been able to keep next year intact and then maybe even built momentum so that more money would have even come in for the 26-27 season and whatnot. So, and again, if Iona had a great year next year, Tobin might have gotten a better job anyway. So
that's true.
He might have gotten a better job offer. Nobody even considered that aspect of this. Is that what if Iona went out and won 25 games next year and he would have just gotten some other job somewhere, and then there's no buyout to worry about. So
the one thing we know for certain is we don't know what's going to happen.
No, we don't. This turned out to be a tremendous move, and all those folks who made that decision, we can be like, wow, you guys really nailed that. And Iona's had a pretty good history of making some great deals. I remember when Tim Klus got the job, everybody's like, what are we doing? Yep. And boy, were we wrong about that. And you know what I mean? So it's like, you just have to trust that these people who are making these decisions are thinking about where Iona basketball is going to be down the line. And you hope they're right. That's all you can hope. And hopefully the fans realize that. And my heart hurts for Tobin right now. I'm a fan of his wherever he goes. I'm going to buy a sweatshirt for wherever team he lands at, because I'm going to be his fan for the rest of my life. Because I thought he was great here. I thought he was a great person for our university. It just wasn't at the right time for what Iona wants and in this era. So, all right. Well, thanks for coming on, and let's get somebody else there. Mency, I thought I approved you, but see it if I didn't, let me know. I'll go back and try again. In the meantime, I can approve somebody else here. I think I just approved Jaden Daly, but it might take a second to click on there. Let's see. All right, Jaden, I think you'll be on there.
I am. You got me, guy?
I do. Jaden, fire away, buddy.
I have some thoughts. I don't know if they're worthy of being shared in a public space.
How many 4-letter words are in there?
Well, several of those were thrown around earlier, both by myself and several of the people to whom I've spoken with.
Yep. Go for it. Share what you like.
I'm not going to be too critical given my standing with with the MAC and how much I've covered the program for how long. But needless to say, I'm shocked and I'm disappointed. I'm going to start there. I don't think you get rid of a guy in 2 years, regardless of how the money guys feel. I think the second half was enough to buy him another year. Let's be honest. And obviously, we all love Tobin. We all love dealing with him. But he got it done on the court in light of the circumstance. You're talking about someone who had to rebuild his roster twice over. And that's becoming standard practice for every mid-major. It just happened to hit Iona harder than anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the truth of it. And yeah, I want to be clear though. I know I'm being kind of very diplomatic here because, again, with everyone because of my role with Iona University, which again is an unofficial role. I don't get paid by Iona for anything that I do. But at the same time, yeah, I'm bothered by this. I'm not sold it's the greatest move. But
really
I'm going to put trust. I'm going to put trust in those who made that decision because I trust Iona leadership.
Now,
that's worth.
I know nothing about Dan Giroux's coaching record. By the way, it's pronounced Giroux. I know nothing about his coaching record. I just remember watching him as a player and leading Richmond to the Sweet 16 in 2011. That's all I know about him. I don't know what kind of a coach he is, what kind of style he runs, what kind of system he's looking to employ. We'll find that out, obviously, as we go on and we get into the summer and we get into the preseason later on. But I guess we'll find out whether or not this ends up being a good decision in another year or 2 or 3 years, however long they give him. The question now is, how much of a leash are you giving Giroux after you only gave Tobin 2 years?
Right. And there's still, and more, now there'll be even more money at stake than we have. So.
And the other thought, Guy, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I got other stuff I have to get to also with this being tournament week, but this hit me also. An interesting butterfly effect. What happens 5 years ago if it's Tobin who gets the job then because he was apparently the runner-up behind Pitino, or what happens if Jared gets that job 5 years ago? Where do you think Iona would be now if it were either of them in 2020 and not Pitino?
Wow. That's tough. I mean, no, so I'll bring back a point from the past. It was in April of 2019 when we had just come off an NCAA, Tim Clous's last NCAA win. But Iona fans started to think about, okay, Tim's going to move on at some point. Who's going to be our replacement? In April of 2019, I posted on Iona message board, well, I want Tobin Anderson. So this is before FDU. And then sure enough, we get to the 1920 season. Tim is sick and can't, has to step away for his health reasons. We go with Trey Arnold. That year's a disaster. COVID then hits. So we figure, well, now we're going to get Tobin Anderson because Iona kind of felt the same way I did. And then some guy named Rick Pitino shows up out of the blue. So, I kind of wanted Tobin all along. It would have been interesting to see what would happen way back then. Of course, the FDU win in the NCAA is always sweet in the pot. Jared's a different story. I'm curious about that. I know that he had lots of friends on Iona. I liked him too. I had no real problem with him. Certainly he found himself in plenty of hot water after leaving us. Iona's been big on second chances with players for years. What about coaches? I mean, certainly if somebody told me along this way here, even now, hey, we're putting in a call to Jared to see if he's interested, I would be like, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, that's how I feel about it. So.
Well, you really can't do much worse in that situation. But I appreciate the perspective as always. We'll probably have some kind of space, either wrapping up the season or sometime over the summer as well. Maybe you'll be able to share some insight on what Giroux does his first couple of months, and we'll talk then. Love you, guy.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jaden. John Kiggins, I haven't talked to you in a minute. How you doing, man?
All good. I know that Iona's making all the headlines today, and I'm currently watching former Iona basketball player Grant Ellis looking for his wife on the final episode of The Bachelor. So
you're staying on brand then.
Absolutely. First things first, I know we've been talking about Tobin, but also, you know, it's a tough day for the assistants.
Yes.
I dealt with Ray Savage a lot, being that I coach in high school in the city. When we have our team camps and stuff like that, he was always super quick to get everything set up for everything that we had to do, and was very accommodating in terms of anything that a lot of the local high schools needed, right? And I think that was a big factor when you're trying to recruit the city. Like Maris has done a really good job of recruiting guys in the city, and I know Drew Metz is, the assistant coach up there is, doing his part. And, I think for them, it kind of is difficult. I think it's bigger than an Iona issue. There's no way, if you were to tell me 10, 15 years ago that the winner of the MAC would be a 16 playing game,
Yeah.
I would have told you that, go back to your dealer, because there's something seriously wrong. But the biggest issue is and again, it's not really an Iona issue, and I feel bad for Tobin because a lot of it is just the landscape of college basketball. In the past, back in the day when, I know you were talking about the Tim Cluse era and stuff like that. I mean, you're talking about guys that had to get waivers in order to transfer. And if not, they had to sit out. Now anybody can kind of transfer and go anywhere. And it really doesn't hurt to put your name in the portal. If you're a kid that has a really good season, you put your name in the portal. I think I saw one school down south that made a graphic basically saying like, congrats, we kept everybody, and that's like one school out of, however many. And, all it takes is for some kid to put up like 15-7, 16-8, whatever the case is. I could put in my name in the portal and money's going to come. They always say money rules the world. And unfortunately it's like, that's where we are now. And I do understand from a perspective of the school, if you're basically saying you want to bring in all this NIL money and you want to do all this stuff because you want to get out of the MAC, I wouldn't blame anybody. If we can go to the Colonial, if you can go to the A10, not necessarily that they're multi-bid leagues, but just a presence. You know what I mean? Like you're having games on TV more often. You have more conversations. You're having the opportunity to recruit, a different type of kid potentially in terms of level. With the guy coming from the NBA, I always find it difficult. You take a look at like Chris Mullen. Recruiting's not easy, in the NBA, it's a lot, easier in terms of free agency, and then you're doing analytics, and it's easy, if he's with the Pelicans and they're playing in Miami or, whatever, and they're flying private, how is he going to enjoy the 3-hour bus ride up to Albany? You know what I mean? It's like a completely different lifestyle. So for him, if that's who it's going to end up being, it's really got to be building like a strong college recruiting staff. Like Mullen struggled a little bit. Obviously he had Slice and he had a couple of these other guys. But you could see in that first year it was the X's and O's. Like I was at a game and I was watching him sit literally on the scores table, and Greg St. Jean is drawing up like the game-winning play. Not that there's anything wrong with Greg St. Jean drawing up the game-winning play, but it's a little different when you're bringing some of these NBA guys in. I think me personally, for the school, bringing somebody that has Iona ties, like I'm a big supporter and thinking of like Brock Erickson,
Yep.
Somebody who's won obviously at Nichols. He's associate head coach at, Texas Rio Grande Valley. Is that necessarily for money guys a sexy hire? I don't know, but is it somebody who's a proven winner and somebody who knows how to recruit in terms of transfers and stuff like that? Absolutely. I saw it at my time at Iona, and I've seen it with everywhere he's gone. But that can all be fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, if it comes down to money, you're really just at liberty of whoever the person who's writing the check wants, and that becomes the difficult part, but I don't think that, this will be an Iona issue. I think it's more of a widespread issue. Like, I know the guy from Fairfield was talking earlier, they have a lot of money built into that new arena. How long are they going to give Chris Casey before they say, yeah, well, Iona did it, we can do it. We have the money to do so. So I do think it's going to be a bigger issue. And, the MAC is not what it used to be. I think they made a huge mistake. I mean, how do you have a primetime slot for the MAC championship game on regular ESPN on a Monday night and say, no, this is not a good idea? we should play on a Saturday when the Big East and every other big conference has their final, but we should play on ESPNU. And
Yeah.
we should play right before the SWAC.
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
Yeah.
So it's really poor management, I'd say, from the league, and that kind of, there's a reason why, nobody really wants to stay at the MAC. The TV deal. Yeah, I guess all the games are on ESPN Plus, but you rarely are seeing games on ESPNU. In the past, it was like, I felt like every Friday night the MAC had games on ESPNU, whether it was like the Monmouths, the Manhattans, even Canisius, Siena. You basically had all these teams, that were super competitive, and games were on TV. Now, if you take a look at the records, I understand why the MAC has a 16 playing game, but that can never happen. A 16 playing game is ridiculous, if you ask me. But, like I said, I feel bad for Tobin. I feel bad for the assistants. I feel bad for everyone who's involved, and now, kind of has to, I'm sure suddenly figure out what they're going to do next, and hopefully they all land on their feet. And, I'm Iona through and through. So whoever comes in next, I wish them the best of luck, and, I'll be rooting them on and stuff like that. But, I'm just hoping that it's not just going to be a continuous carousel. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a lot of good sight. And yes, absolutely. I've gotten to know some of these citizens pretty well too. I exchanged messages today with a couple of them. Yeah, all good guys. They work their asses off. We know what these guys are doing. And they did everything they could, to make Iona a winning program. And again, you feel for them guys. Obviously Tobin got a pretty hefty buyout, so that's all good. These guys, of course, won't see that as much of that. So, hopefully that staff stays intact and they've got a job next, pretty quickly, and because they deserve it and they will win wherever they are. I'm sure of it. So, all right. Thank you again. All right. Let's see. I've been trying to get Mincy in here and I keep approving him and then he keeps kind of vanishing. Tucker, you're back in here. I don't know if you mean to be back in here to request to speak. I'm going to approve you real quick. And then if you don't need to say anything else, I don't know if you wanted to add a quick thought. So I'll throw you on. Mency, I'm wondering if it was just something glitchy there. So hold on 1 second. I'll get to you. Tucker, I just approved you. See if you have anything you wanted to chime in on. Go for it. All right. I think you just clicked on there. Tucker, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh yeah, I've got my thanks, Guy. I just had a couple things. Now I've got kind of my emotions straight a little bit here, and again, thanks. Great commentary all the way around. One question was, Guy, this is probably for you more than anybody, but basically, do you think so? A guy like Tobin comes off the FDU win, and he's got a lot of opportunities out there, right? And he picks Iona, but do you think that and I got two questions on this, but one is, do you think that if they would have said, hey, listen, if you don't win a MAC championship by year 2, we're not going to pursue this any further. Do you think that sways that decision on whether he comes to Iona or not? Because that basically was the expectation. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this earlier too. Now, if that's going to be the norm, and again, now with more and more money at stake, the patience is not going to be there. The grace period is just not there. So, and that's why I know these people making decisions are doing it with the right frame of mind, but is it really logical to be able to say, go out and get 13 new players and then make them really good? Really fast. You don't have time to build. We don't want you to blow all of the non-conference schedule. No, you have to be good from day one. Is that even logical? I don't think so. What do you think?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that the frustration for me is just like, wait a minute here. The guy had a million opportunities, and maybe millions are strong, but he had several opportunities. He picked this one. But if the expectations are laid out plainly, like, hey, listen, you got to win this thing and you got to win it tomorrow. Maybe it would take a different path. And there's a lot of paths out there at that time, as we all know. He was a hot commodity after the FDU win. And then 2, which is a new one I haven't heard, Guy, which I appreciate your insight on. Basically from the monologue, it was, this decision was made. This decision was kind of final, if you will, no matter how far he got this year. At what point, and this, I've been on Twitter about this quite a bit, and it's really bothering me out of all the things. what point are they sitting there and they're saying, holy cow, this is going to be harder and harder for us to explain? Is it the Sacred Heart game when they go from the 7 seed to the 4? Is it the Manhattan upset? Is it the Quinnipiac? And all of a sudden, it's like, are they really on board with Tobin winning? And at what point does this become more and more difficult to the point which most people reference in all these Twitter kind of comments is the guy was just at the MAC championship. And at what point does the administration, who's already, according to you, made that decision, at what point are they saying, holy cow, this is getting harder and harder to explain to our fan base?
Right. No, I think that's very fair. Now, I know you made a joke, and I don't think it was a joke, actually. I think you kind of meant it. Where, was our AD and was the president like actually rooting against us in some way?
It's a fair question.
And I'm going to say no, only because why would you not want us to win a title? But the thing is that they still would have done the same thing even if we had won, which is mind boggling to me that they were going to do that. But that's what I'm understanding to be, is that this was going to be the plan no matter what. So no, I do think that they were rooting for Tobin, but certainly at some point, you're right. At what point is it like, wow, this is now hard? And I think this, I think the MAC tournament is what kind of did it. I think if Iona had bowed out to Manhattan in that first game, everybody would have been like, well, we had an up and down year, and now we finished a couple games under 500. So here we are again. It would have been more understandable, but the fact that we didn't, and matter of fact, we played probably two of our best games of the year going into that MAC final, I think had Iona fans sold. There were a lot of Iona fans that wanted Tobin gone that actually kind of changed their tune in the last few weeks.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
And they're like, no, all right, I see it. Guy, you were right. We're seeing this turnaround just like you said we were gonna. And here we are. And look at us. Look at these first two games in that tournament. We're flying high. I was getting all kinds of texts. People were assuming we were going to beat Mount. I wasn't so confident. I was worried about day 3 because of the guys that were on Ramadan. And I just felt like the legs, it was a risk. And Mount is another team that grinds you. On Jaden Daly's, MAC preview space, I actually picked Iona to get to the final and lose to Merrimack. I was close. Because I did have legitimate concerns about what we were going to look like on day 3, but we were better on day 1 and day 2 than I thought we were going to be. And then, day 3 sucked. They just didn't have it. And they didn't have, and credit to Mount, because Mount had a great game plan, but we didn't have it either. And so yeah,
didn't have it. We were up 30 minutes out of the 40.
But no, I meant the legs were going to go. Well, I've seen enough MAC finals to know that teams fade in the second half of the MAC tournament championship game like almost every year. And I didn't expect it to be us though.
But you have to admit, those guys, the AD and the president or whoever, point fingers, whoever it is, had to be like, oh my God, if Tobin and Iona make it to the NCAA tournament, we got a real mess on our hands to announce that he's going to be terminated. You have to, there had to be some conversations of this isn't going well when it was going well, which is odd and disturbing all by itself.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. And I love you and we've talked a lot and but there's some things here that just are a little awkward.
No doubt. And it hasn't been clean by any stretch. I know how it went down, when it went down. That wasn't done right either. It wasn't handled well. And again, this wasn't even supposed to be to do this on Gail's giving day. It just kind of shows where things are going. The whole thing was not handled as well as it could have been, but here we are. So
thank you,
yep. Tucker. I hope you're good. And, looking forward to seeing where Tobin bounces back.
Love you. Be good.
All righty.
Guy, you got me? You got me?
Yes, Mency has been waiting. I got news for you guys. There is nobody who has hounded me on Twitter for as long as Mency Magic has. He is a Merrimack fan. We had planned to do a space the night after the MAC semifinals, but Merrimack did not hold up their end of the bargain, much to his dismay. But he wanted to be on this one. So I said, now we are going to talk live in front of the whole world, or at least 100 people or whatever's listening. So Mency, welcome. And let's hear what you have to say as an outsider looking in on what's happened at Iona basketball today. Oh, geez. You just tell me you got kicked out. Let's try it one more time. No, you're there. I see you. Check your speakers. After all that, he gets kicked out. See that? This is what happens. You try to be nice to people. They just leave. Hold on. Let me just see if he comes back. I might have to see if I can. I see some other requests. Like I said, if I don't know who you are, I'm probably not going to approve you because I don't know what you're going to say, and I can't let the inmates run the asylum. Let's see if Mency's back. Hold on a moment. Uh, This one's, I mean, usually I'm taking fault for this, but I'm blaming Mency here. I think he dropped the ball. I'm going to bring in, I know somebody who's been pretty hot under the collar today on Twitter. I've seen a lot of his, tweets today. Rob Earl, Island 29. I'm approving you. You're going to be on in a minute. I know you're unhappy about all this, just language and respect to the Iona program, but fire away.
Hey, guy, was that for me? I missed the beginning of it.
Yeah. I was just saying that I know that you've been fired up about all this today. Just, keep it clean as you, comment on what went down at Iona today.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, and thanks for allowing me to share a couple of thoughts, guy. Just a little bit of background because we have never met. Although I became a fan of Iona way back in the early '90s. I actually grew up in Potsdam, and maybe you guys remember a guy by the name of Jerry Welsh who did pretty good right at our little school up there, and then went on to Iona, and then Tim, and then as we've mentioned the last little bit of time, it's been real good. I think the question that I have. And it's and I think I don't know that I'm fired up. I think in a way I'm more kind of heartbroken, not only for my friend, for Tobin, because I've known him since the '90s as well. But I think the part is I'm a little bit heartbroken. I think for the game itself and for the direction that it appears that colleges, the tough choices colleges have to make. And so I think the question I would have, if you go back to an earlier comment that Fairfield Frank said, which is, it's a results-based business, and you do have to win. And then I was very intrigued by your monologue talking about how this really started in early January, it seems like, and it was almost as if it was a foregone conclusion, that there was going to be a change, and that the organization and the program was going to go a different direction. I think the question that I have and I'm curious about is, does the brand of Iona and Iona basketball, which has been so strong, I mean, it's bulletproof, but now all of a sudden when other players, top players, Tobe's a great recruiter. Nobody's going to take away any of his recruiting ability and ability to find unbelievable talent that is maybe overseen and have them excel and play at unbelievable levels, way above maybe even their own capabilities as individuals, but have them play so well as a team. Do you think that there's going to be, regardless of the money and the capital investment that's being made, do you think that there's a potential to have the Iona brand to be hurt by this for the long haul as this gets played out over the next number of months? Everybody's about to get real bored here after the beginning of April and really delve into some of the mess. And I'm just wondering that, with capital equity firms and I shouldn't say that. With alumni that are really supportive and dedicated to the program, and now kind of calling some of the shots, persuading administrators to have to make decisions that we've all agreed don't seem to be fair. Do you think the brand will be hurt by this? Because this program is one of the first to really go down this road, and removing a staff of dedicated people. I'm curious, as an alumni, grad and a huge fan, and good Lord, I mean, I can't get enough of your podcast and all that you have to say, and I love interacting with all the folks here. But what about the Iona brand, and is it going to potentially tarnish, recruits wanting to come in and wondering the motives and what might happen to them and their futures and any NIL agreements that they make, or let alone some coaches? So it's a question directed to Iona because kind of Iona chose to be first out of the gate with this, I guess. But
Yeah. I'll say this, and I'm going to go back to the Pitino era one more time. When we first announced that Rick Pitino was going to be our coach, there was a mixed reaction because Rick's name had not been cleared yet by anything, and he was still coming out of he was still in exile in Greece,
yeah,
and there were a lot of people who were just against it. And I don't think we're really part of the program again after that. And like in terms of being true fans and following and going to games, they thought that was, the words I heard a lot where Iona sold its soul for basketball. Now, are we doing that again? I don't know. I don't know. But to your point, this, people are not, I don't think people are surprised that we're doing this, because I think after having Rick Pitino, after having Tim Close, I think everybody just thinks we want to win. And so but at the same time, you're right. What do players think about this? Do they think twice about it? What do coaches think? What if, and thank you for Jane Daly for correcting me how to say his name. I've been talking about this guy for a while now, and I didn't know how to say his name. So Dan Giroux, I guess is how we're supposed to be saying it. What if he doesn't work out, and are they going to let him go in 2 years? And is somebody else going to want the job if they know it's only a 2-year run? So do they have to almost give him 3 years no matter what? Unless again, it's a complete disaster where he's, 10 and 20 in both years, which, would be, especially with the talent they're talking about bringing in. I'm not going to get into that here, but I've heard some big names that they're trying to get to transfer here because they have the money to do it. So,
Right.
I mean, the talent level is going to go up. So the expectation is the wins are going to be there. And then, we'll find out. We're going to find out about that. But to your point, I mean, does he have a short leash? Because a lot of money will be spent on these players. And if they're not producing and he's not winning, is he gone in 2 years? I don't know. You're right. Could tarnish the program for years to come. But if it works, maybe again, and we're all feeling it. We're all feeling like there's going to be a divide in the NCAA Division I landscape soon. There was a Curry Hicks Sage said last week, half the NEC is probably going to go to Division III soon.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, the MAC schools have very little money. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Niagaras and Canisius of the world say, you know what, we don't really have the money to do this anymore. And you're talking about now, you're telling me that teams in my conference, I mean, Iona's NIL is about to go really through the roof.
Yeah.
Siena's is going to go up. Fairfield, I think, is going to go up. I think, some of these schools that have money are going to find more money for basketball. And some of these schools that don't have it are going to be like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's going to lead to some huge paradigm shift where it's going to become a haves and have-nots. Even if we do have low majors, mid majors, and high majors, still, just based on the sizes of the schools we're talking about. But, who's left, by the time all this happens. So, it's hard to say. It's a gamble that has to work, or it's going to make us look really bad. I mean, and again, Pitino didn't blow up here. Wasn't perfect here either. And he left the Iona fans with a pretty bad taste in our mouths, and shame on us. I've tried to warn St. John's fans who don't want to listen to me, of course, because they think it's sour grapes. I would not. I mean, we don't know what Rick Pitino's going to do next. Of course, he's saying all the same exact things he said when he was at Iona. Oh, I'm never leaving here, So, you don't trust anybody anymore, and that's fine.
Right.
But what does that mean for Iona basketball's future? It's a bumpy week for us this week, because a lot of people are saying, what the hell is Iona doing? But, it'll be forgotten about if the wins happen. At the end of the day, for winning, the fans are going to be happy, and the donors and the people who are now pissed off and don't want to donate are going to turn around and donate again because they're going to know it's going to matter.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair statement. I think one of the things that's interesting based on your response is all of a sudden, the as our money, or as the Iona money, or the lower mid majors and the major money goes up, so won't the majors. And so I think ultimately it just becomes kind of a little bit of a deeper pockets type of a game, and you start to turn into, well, who's got the deepest pockets and who can hold on to their money the longest. One follow-up question that sparked from your response is if we were to go back, and let's not go back to year one, but let's just go back to this basketball season. If we had played, a cream puff, 1 or 2 decent games early in the year, something where we come out of the non-conference with 1 or 2 losses, but maybe not as well prepared to make the run that happened. What type of an impact do you think that would have happened? So how much of an impact do you think, there was 13 new players and a brutal, I mean, that was a tough, we all saw what Delaware did, right? Delaware looked great against us and then horrible. Then all of a sudden, where'd Delaware come from again?
I will counter that in that the schedule on paper was better than it actually turned out to be. I mean, if you look at the ratings of all these teams that we played, yeah, there were some couple good teams in there for sure, but it didn't turn out. I mean, like Colgate didn't turn out as good as expected. Delaware didn't turn out as good as expected. Hofstra didn't turn out as good as expected. There was quite a bit of that. So, I mean, the schedule was, that said, a lot of these teams are still better than most teams in the MAC. So it was still,
Yeah.
an upgrade in that regard. But, it's hard to say. And this is like the Maris syndrome. Maris scheduled like the absolute worst schedule in the country. They had a lot of wins. And then when they got to MAC games and again, even a lot of their non-conference games, they win a million games by 2 points. And so their record was sparkling. They have to be the weakest 2020 win team I've ever seen in my life. And, it worked for them though, because they did generate positivity among their fans because the casual fans don't know the difference. So to your point, if you're trying to build that kind of confidence, the typical Iona fan is not going to know the difference between scheduling, Columbia versus scheduling Yale. They're just not. So, do we schedule Columbia next year and not schedule Princeton or Cornell like we did this year, and do we try to get those secure wins? And it is false, but to build up that kind of false positive energy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I always like the idea of scheduling as tough as you can. I love to flip it and I'd rather play the hardest schedule you can play. And if you get slaughtered, so be it. But with the money that they're going to put into this, I don't expect that we're going to play a bunch of doormats. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your thoughts.
Thanks so much, Guy. Guy, it was great to follow you along. I've become a huge fan, and you're one of the most fair and honest people that do this. There's a whole group of great ones, and you're right there at the top.
Appreciate you. Thank you for that. All right. We got a couple other people who have been waiting a bit here. I also see some royalty here. Kevin Sweeney's coming on. So let's see if I can get him approved and get some comments out of Kevin here. Let me know when you're on board here, Kevin. Let's see. I just approved you. There you are.
Gotcha. Yep.
How you doing?
I'm good. Interesting day in Mac world, eh?
Yes. And I know you have some connections to the Iona program, but so I'd love to hear what your take is even from like a national perspective, if you can talk to us a little bit about, I mean, obviously there's everybody saying, what the hell is Iona doing? Is that happening nationally? Like, what the hell is Iona doing right now?
Yeah, I think it is. In the interest of, as you sort of alluded to, my connections, like I don't want to speak necessarily too much about the nitty gritty of the situation. But I would say, I guess what I wanted to come on and say is this. I thought you had an interesting point about, like athletics' role in the university and like we're investing all this money and all that, right? Like, I think the thing that frustrates me is I could understand Iona's thinking and any school's thinking if they say, hey, look, like we don't believe we have the guy right now that can help us elevate our basketball program to the level it needs to get to, right? That's understandable, right? It's the same reason you take the risk and hire Rick Pitino is you believe like there's a guy out there that can change how we're perceived fundamentally on a national level. Like I think as a person who covers college basketball for a living, we need schools to want to think that way because we need schools that are invested at the highest level. And I have no issue with Iona being invested at the highest level. I think it's great for the league, great for the MAC. It's great for the league. I think it's great for mid-major basketball in the Northeast. I think we need more of it. I guess what I find frustrating is my perception of this move is less we need to put together all this money to get the best coach who can elevate us to like the boosters or the people who have all the money wanting to essentially own the program and run the program how they see fit, right? And this is a trend everywhere. This is not a unique to Iona thing. I think, as you sort of said, Iona will not be it's not the first, will not be the last that goes in a direction like this. But look, if Iona decided, look, Tobin Anderson's not the guy that can get us, we're 250 whatever in KenPom, and like if we're going to be consistently in the top 100 and competing to win championships and potentially, getting NCAA tournament bids and pushing for at-large bids, like if that's the goal, if that's the goal of the program, we don't think Tobin's that guy. All right, buy him out, pay him his money, and move on. But I think the idea that you would do that to turn around and hire someone who has no experience in college basketball and doesn't know what he doesn't know yet makes no sense to me. There are guys you could go out and make big swings with if you have the money that I think Iona will have. That would be the angle I would want to go if I were an institution, not pick someone that I feel like, okay, now I'm in control of, and we're going to treat this like a professional organization. Because quite frankly, MAC basketball is not and will never be a professional organization, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, and I don't know what time you came on. I made a comment earlier that the idea of trying to adapt more of a financially secure model is okay and it makes sense, and that's the way they explained it in the release and all of that. But why not take baby steps and do that? Hire a GM who is that guy, who is the finance guy, who's going to run the program from that aspect, but then keep Tobin. And then you can always, and then, if you have a great year next year, Tobin's probably getting another job anyway. So, this whole flip at this time is what's irking me more than anything. It should have been a little more gradual. The plan itself is good, but the execution is too hasty.
Right. I think even if you want it to be hasty, I'd want to be hasty and try to get like Kamani Young or try to get Fran McCaffrey or Bobby Hurley or someone who's been like a high major coach, right? Like really make a splash. Like I guess I don't see what Iona's doing as like making a splash. I think it's hiring someone that wants a head coaching job, has no other real avenues to get one, and understanding that he is friendly with the people who will make sure that the money flows to get him players. That's my perception of it, at least.
Maybe while you're here, one more, I can ask you a quick question. I know I've seen this and I don't think it's been brought up during this call. It is, I have read and heard it's going to be a trend this college search season to give NBA guys that chance to get into the college game because of the financial aspect of it. And it's assumed that they have more, already a base knowledge of it that the typical college coach is not. Is that true? And is that trend actually a thing?
I think it's probably framed a little bit the other way in the sense of like, don't necessarily need to hire someone who's been a college lifer just because they unscape, because the landscape's completely different anyway. And if you have money for players, you can get access to players. You don't need the relationship component that you've always needed to have. I think it's more that than, they're familiar with a professional model, and so we need to hire this person. Because quite frankly, again, NBA assistant coaches know less about the business of basketball than anyone. They don't know anything more about the business of basketball than anyone else, right? Like the idea that like someone sitting on the front of the bench for, the Sacramento Kings or whatever is somehow more of an expert on like how to build a professional franchise than, any college coach. I don't think that necessarily passes the smell test. But I do, it's definitely a trend. Some of them are NBA guys who see it as an opportunity to become a head coach and quite frankly didn't have other avenues to become a head coach. Some of them are guys who have connections to a place and would love an opportunity to try their hand. Some of them are guys who are really, really some of them are younger guys that realize this is a quicker way to a big brand and then could flip back to the pros at some point. So it's definitely growing. I don't think there's necessarily one avenue of it. I think the professionalization of the sport is definitely a part of it, but I don't necessarily view it as something as, they understand pro basketball and this is pro basketball now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for dropping by, Kevin. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Good insights there. All right. We're going to go from a Siena person. Sorry, Kevin, to an Iona person. We're going to go to Gale Force here. If I can get him on, you should be able to speak in a moment here. We can get, I know Gale Force has been fired up today for sure. He does not like this move. I've been working in the background to keep him under control, but I'm going to unleash him here a little bit. Let him say his mind. Gale Force, what's up, man? Check your mic that is picking up your speaking voice. We don't hear you yet. Nothing yet. All right, well, we're going to let Gale Force sort that out. I'll bring in another Gale fan. I have Kaz Go Gales. Let's get you on here. You should be coming on in a minute. Oh, Steve, Gale Force, is that you? Was that you coming on? I hear some noises, but nothing steady. So let's see whoever can talk first here. We have Gale Force, we have Kaz Go Gales. One of you guys, whoever can speak first, we'll get you in here.
Hey, Guy, it's Kaz. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, man. I know you've been fired up today a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, look, shocking day, and I appreciate you hosting this call and sort of giving the insights on what's been taking place in the background. Um, you addressed a little bit of it during your monologue and then during one of the answers to the question. So last year, I had a conversation with Matt, the AD, and was just probing about, Iona's future and whether we were looking to move into a more prominent conference. And he didn't answer the question, but what he did say was that we should expect a lot of realignment in college athletics as it relates to conferences in the coming years, and he pointed to what took place in the Pac-10. And so I thought it was a really interesting response when he brought up realignment, and so I wanted to get your perspective on it. Like, is Iona looking to, like, are we potentially looking at realignment and Iona taking place in that and going into something more prominent? Or are we just, satisfied with being the Yankees of the MAC? Or, you brought up that some of the MAC teams may just opt out of Division I entirely. So I really wanted to kind of understand that, because that's probably what's behind some of this, and you touched on it as far as just, getting a coach in place that they feel is positioned for that. Even though I thought, Tobin was extraordinarily well positioned for next year with the potential retention.
Yeah, and thanks for all that. I think it's tricky because we don't know what the future holds in terms of realignment. I think if there are some other shifts and say a Dayton or a VCU start leaving the A10, they're going to look to fill some of those voids. But if you're filling that with Iona and Fairfield, you're not getting the same value. And we've seen it with the A10; they're getting fewer and fewer bids over the years. So do you gain anything by going to the A10 and basically going from a low major conference to a mid major conference that still only got one team in the tournament? I don't know. Or again, even something like the CAA, same thing. They're only going to get one team in most years, except for some fluke years here and there. Is it even worth making a move up? I don't know. So, but that said, again, the goals from what I hear are very lofty. They want, I know, again, I've heard, Dan Doyle wants to see Iona like in the top 50. And I think that's probably a little delusional in this climate where the big schools, everything we do favors the big schools. We're never going to get the schedule necessary to unless you play, 6 bye games against top 25 teams, you're never going to play the non-conference schedule necessary. And if you stay in the MAC, you're only going to get dragged down by all these teams that are ranked in the 300s. So they're never going to get there staying in the MAC. So I would say, to answer your question, I would imagine that if an opportunity is to move up so that their general rating moves up, and it might open a door for something. They're not going to go from where they are now to a top 50 program in the next 3 years. It's never, ever going to happen. Now, how much money they spend because of the current landscape of the MAC and whatever we could possibly move into between now and then won't give us that freedom to do that. So, I imagine if you want to look really long term, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, they would love an invite to the Big East. And who knows what's going to happen with that, but even the Big East might not be the same Big East 15 years from now. So, everybody's going to join the Big Ten, and the SEC are going to be, 50 teams apiece, I think, or something. So, it's really hard to predict, but if that's the goal, as I understand it, is to be at that level, and to achieve that, it's not going to be in the MAC. So that's all I can really guess on there.
Thanks, Guy.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. All right. Let's see. We lost Gale Force. Hopefully he comes back. I guess Mency just totally gave up. He'll blame me for that offline, I'm sure. But I see David Ace 31, another Iona fan's been waiting a bit, so we'll get him in here. And I think he's the last person who's requested to speak. So we'll see what David has to say.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How you doing?
All right, pretty good, guy. Thank you. Thank you for having me and for hosting the spaces.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Glad to have you on. What's on your mind? What do you think about all this?
Honestly, a little sad because, just the whole situation. And then now, with the information that you provided us, that this has apparently been planned for months, it's very sad. And, uh, I'm an Iona alum. I came to Iona literally at the last year of Willard's tenure and was here throughout Tim Cluse's tenure. So, I'm used to seeing Iona constantly winning. And then, to your point, and I think it has to be emphasized, it's okay to have a down season or two. We, if we don't qualify, if we don't make it to the tournament, it's not the end of the world. Every team, every program will have its ebbs and flows. And just given with the situation that Coach Tobin had, it's a very difficult situation. And I think, he should have been granted at minimum a third year. Last season I give it as a pass because, he's exceeding Coach Patino and then he has to rebuild a program literally from scratch. And, and luckily we had Oz, with us. Did it work out? No, not really. But, it was a pass. It's okay. This year he had to rebuild the program again. It got, we had better results, made it to the MAC final. And then, we had Day who was actually, on the spaces earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but, he announced on senior night that he was coming back. We were hoping to have at least some of our key players returning next season. We have a solid recruiting class coming in. And then with the potential of what the portal can provide us, next year, definitely, I could have seen Iona be a top 3 MAC program. And next year, definitely would have been okay. Like this is the year that you take that next step and you actually provide us with, better, I guess, quote unquote, better results than what was provided the last 2 seasons. Um, I'm very ambitious. I want to see my alma mater do well. I'm very big proponent of seeing, hopefully seeing Iona in the A10, I know some don't, but I do because I just think I think it was brought up earlier that it opens up a whole world for recruits now. Now they'll say, okay, we're recruiting a different type of player that we probably wouldn't have recruited based in the MAC, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And now, I think now to, what you had mentioned with the new vision going forward, that now we're having all this influx of money coming in. At what point does the money, quote unquote, I guess the money stop? Because at the end of the day, we're still a results driven business. And what happens if, worst case scenario, Jarrell doesn't pan out? Are we going to fire him in 2 years and then hire another coach and then start all over again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, to kind of quote, Steve Cohen, yeah, we have the money, but we're not going to be drunken sailors at the same time. We can't just continually spend money just for the sake of spending it. At a certain point, we have to manage our expectations and then give at least a longer leash so that way we can see what we're trying to build. As frustrating as this season was, I was in this mindset of trust the process. I know we'll be fine. Iona was fine before. It will be fine after Patino. I still believe the same case with Coach Tobin. It was fine before. It will be fine after. But, it's just very frustrating seeing it, how it's planned out. And then especially on Gail's Giving Day, it's just a bad look.
Yeah. And I agree with you. And, this is why we talked about the, 3 years is the usual time frame. And especially when you have, again, you're following Rick Pitino, the roster is brand new. NIL was stripped bare when Rick left. So you throw away year 1, you just do. And then year 2 wasn't what we wanted to start off with. And again, at that point, early in January is when the conversation started happening, but they didn't let the system play. They took it probably too far. When I say they, I'm saying those who were having these conversations. It just went too far, too early, rather than just, hey, let's be ready to make a move because Tobin may not be the answer to, okay, now Tobin's fixed all this. Tobin is a stubborn guy. I think he wants to do things his way, yet he made some pretty strong adjustments as this year went on in terms of how he ran his system. He threw his system out and said, screw it, just play man. And that took a lot for somebody who just says, no, my press works. Your press works when you have guys who know your system. And how can you expect to learn an intricate system like Tobin's press, in weeks over the summer, just over some workouts. So, I mean, the press wasn't there. Biggie's departure gave him a reason to scrap it, because Biggie was the chaos at the beginning of that press. That was when it was effective early on in the year. And so, yeah, so this year progressed, and then next year we looked good on paper. That's why you give 3 years. We think about Kevin Willard when he was at Iona. His first 2 years, season 1 and season 2, he won 12 games each year. They didn't fire him. And then he won 20 the third game, and he probably bailed a year before he should have, for Seton Hall. So be it. That's another, another day for another podcast, but he got 3 years. And so he had his chance to succeed. Maybe Tobin would have had the same opportunity, and they wouldn't have had to buy him out. Maybe they go to the NCAAs next year and he would have won 25 games and got an offer from Seton Hall or somebody else, and, there's no way to know. Cause he never got that chance. So like I said, I mean, I don't think it was the right move at this time, but I understand why they're doing what they're doing. I wish they did it differently.
I agree. I agree 1000%. And even if Tobin was not the guy, he deserved that opportunity to at least try to prove that he was the guy.
Yeah.
And, it's just not a good look. Like, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I'll still be there to support, as will you and a whole bunch of others that are on the spaces. We'll be there, next season supporting our team, because, that's our team. That's who we have connection to. We root for the name on the front, not the back. But, it's just a real bummer, a real bummer. And, I know he'll do well. He's a good coach. He's won at every level, D2, FDU, here he's won, making it to the MAC final in the second year of pretty much an impossible task, so he'll do well.
Yep.
It's just a real bummer. So
yeah, no question. All right, Dave, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. I see Mency is back. Let's try to get him on again. Let's see what happens if he can on it. Just to prove you, Mency, let's see if you
can. You hear me?
I can. Fire away.
This has become a comedic bit. I mean, people are just giving me so much shit because I'm trying to get on, but right. I've since done my own space. I've posted thoughts. Right. I'm going to be very brief. This is what I'll say. One, and again, now everyone's like, Mency is on. This is what I'll say. I think Tobin Anderson here was definitely collateral damage. I mean, he was, he's a victim here. And I think his brother, did a really good job holding his tongue. I mean, as a Merrimack fan, I would say, like, I know our coaches have the utmost respect for him and scrimmaged him when he was at Stack. Tobin Anderson was a great basketball coach long before, he got put on the map with FDU. He's a basketball lifer. He's been a head coach a ton of different places, and he knows what he's doing. And there was unreasonable expectations. Guy, I would say there's one thing I respectfully disagree with you on. Like, even if they lost to Manhattan in the MAC tournament, like, in what world does he not get a third year? Like, he's the coach at Iona, right? And he definitely deserved that third year, the way the team played the second half of the year. And the other thing I said on MySpace, which, had no one listening because everyone's on here, was when you schedule teams, and you said this, like Merrimack scheduled Butler and Rutgers. Those are two teams that could have gone to the tournament. Turned out they sucked. So to expect Iona, boosters to expect Iona to be a top 50 or top 100 team is almost a virtual impossibility with the way the MAC is and the way the MAC is a 25th or 26th best conference.
Yep.
You're playing teams after your non-conference that are top, they're 250 to 350 in Ken Pom. So the metrics, it's unreasonable. And I think that for Iona to expect that, I don't think it's right. I don't think, and look, I mean, I just don't understand why someone who's, been in this business forever is treated like that.
Yeah.
And I think that all jokes aside, like, you guys have a very loyal fan base, and, you've stuck with this program. And again, like, you guys have had a lot of success. You've been spoiled with Tim Kluse and Rick Pitino, but Tobin Anderson's a fucking good basketball coach and a good dude. And for this to happen, and now it's like, now there's going to be so much pressure on the new guy, Dan G. And you know what? This is true at any job, guy. Like, Dan G., it's not his fault this happened to Tobin Anderson, but the expectations on him
Hmm?
are going to be through the roof
Absolutely.
because they are. And it's unfair to him because A, he's going to have a lot of money to play with, and B, he was kind of handpicked and he forced someone out who only got 2 years. So
No doubt.
good luck to you guys. I mean, I think it's sucks. I mean, it sucks for you guys
Yeah.
because, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And Fetterman and I were talking about this earlier too. When Rick was here, we were top 100 easily, top 75 for the most part. And
But
then
the league was better
but the
back
league
then,
was
right?
better then too. It did help. And even that's with a tough non-conference schedule and winning most of the games and all of that. And that's as
Yep.
far as we got then. And even that's why I said I would be fine with the Clues years. And Sam took that to mean that I just winning titles over and over again. I was talking more about the ratings. I mean, yeah, a couple of Tim's teams were very highly ranked, but most of his teams were more like 120, 130. That's a great place to be for the MAC favorite every year. And that's enough to be noticed nationally and, to get a non-16 seed, on selection Sunday and all of that. That's kind of not, that's kind of a top level spot of where a MAC team could be. I would be, that to me is a more realistic goal. Let's get to 125. And then if we can grow bigger than that, we'll worry about it then. Let's just get back to where we're one of the top 125 or so teams in the country.
Yeah, but guy, if you're talking 125, you've got to go 18-2 in the MAC, right? And you've got to win some quad two or maybe even
Yeah.
one quad one game, right?
Yeah.
In the non-conference, but those MAC losses have to be at home, have to be on the
On the
road
road. Yeah.
to good teams,
Yeah,
right?
and your non-conference schedule has to be like top 50. No, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. No doubt.
But
Um,
you know what? Last thing, and again, I'm so glad I got on, is he got screwed. And I know it's hard because look, as I said to someone today on a text, like, you and the Iona fans, like, you have a long time association with the school. You went to the school. So your affinity for Iona basketball is going to last longer than Tobin Anderson, longer than Dan Giroux,
yep,
longer than the guy after that. So,
yep,
but I know you got to know him and had a connection with him, and it's probably disheartening to see. But again, the people that made this decision, they're going to be around this program and this university for a long time, right?
yeah,
And you're going to have to see them at games, and you're going to have to. So you're in a tough spot, man. I get it, but thanks for letting me on,
yeah,
man. It's just a tough day for you guys. I feel bad. I mean, now it
yeah,
stinks. I
that,
mean, two
yeah,
years, man. That's terrible. That's
yeah.
terrible, but it's college. Look, and again, like, I know, and you're going to go on Curry's space, like, Curry even taught, and I know it's apples to oranges, like the guy at Oral Roberts, Russ Springman, been in the business 30 years. He only got 2 years at Oral Roberts and he got
Mm-hmm.
fired
Yep,
because they're delusional donors that want to win right away and Oral Roberts made a big run in the tournament. They expect that every year.
yep,
And it's, with the portal era, it's just very, very difficult to do. Whether NJ and other Day came back or whatever. I mean, look, man, like, you got to get hot, and there's so much that goes into it in a one bid league, and they've got to understand that. No, guy, the people that
yeah.
are making this decision, or no?
I think so too, and that's where I come in. I think too. So you have our trustees who, of course, have more money than I'll ever have, and that's fine. What I have though is I have the ear of the people, and I have a voice online. I have a presence that I don't think any other Iona alum has right now.
Right.
So I'm going to use my own influence to get into these inner workings a little more. And I have made inroads. I mean, I will say that I've been in contact with at least one, um, significant donor to the program and along this road. More than one, to be fair. I don't know Dan Doyle that well. I plan on getting to know him. I don't know Dan Giroux at all. I plan on getting to know him because I want to know what the plan is, and I want to know if I'm curious and if I find holes in it. And because I can look at it from a different perspective than they do. So that's going to be my goal in these next few weeks as the transition happens is for me to dig in a little deeper, get some more facts and make my own assessments. Now, yeah, I'm an Iona supporter. I'm always going to be trying to keep a positive front. And I'm not going to say I'm going to spin this to make it sound like it's the greatest move ever because I'm not convinced it will be, but I do want the details and I want to know more. And that's my intention is to find out so that I can make my own educated opinion on this as opposed to just saying this is terrible. Now, right now, again, that's why I said at the beginning in my open, I didn't want this to go into like, the future of Iona basketball. Let's talk about Dan Giroux. Let's talk about the roster. There's all season to do that. Today was about Tobin, who is a friend and I feel for as well as his staff. And again, I'm going to say, I think it was the wrong move to do this, but at the same time, as long as the plan is a good one, I'll understand it. I have to understand it more. So
I'll say one last
that's what
thing,
I'm
and I
going to
see
do.
his brother is still on here. Like, I really applaud his brother for like coming on and being very eloquent. And I mean, this is probably, I mean, obviously, if you were hearing the whispers, probably they were too.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I know they were because Jason Leone, I saw him at the game on Friday, and like people knew. I mean, but again, you're almost like, look, dude, I got to the MAC finals. Like, how, like this, they can't do this. They can't do this. And then it's almost like they did it. And now it's reality. And those guys got to find a job. And Tobin Anderson will have zero problem finding a job,
I
right?
would agree with that.
Maybe not a head job right now, but I mean, look, coaches take care of coaches, right?
Yep.
And everyone
Yeah.
in the industry is pissed
Well, exactly
today.
right. There's enough people who think this was so stupid that he should not have a problem finding another job. And hopefully he brings his entire staff with him.
Right. All right. Listen, guy, thanks. And
Thanks, Vincent. Glad we can do this.
thanks, bud. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Paul Snyder has been waiting a while. Peebo 52. I'm going to approve you. I don't know if we've ever met. We may have, but I'm letting it ride. It's since we're almost 2 hours in. So I'm approving you, and I see Brian. I'll have you on too, and Tom as well. We'll get you guys in, and we'll try to wrap up here. So we'll start with Paul.
Hey, Guy, how are you?
All right, how you doing? Your thoughts today?
Well, I go back with Tobin to St. Thomas Aquinas because Dimitri Roberts came out of Mount Vernon and was the star guard for him there.
Yep.
And, then he brought him with him to FDU with Grant Singleton, and then they, knocked off Purdue while I was up at Albany for the first and second round of the NCAAs that year. And, I followed him here to Iona and covered him in at UBS a few games while he was at Iona, and it's just shocking to me that they would let him go. And from what you're saying, even if he would have won the MAC tournament, they would have still. This was all in the works, and they had the replacement coach all ready to go.
That is what it sounds like. Now, I'm guessing, but from what my understanding is that even if we had won and we played another week of NCAA tournament basketball, that this was going to be happening.
Wow, I'm finding out there's just so many underhanded people, and an assistant coach from Newman Goretti said to me, "It's a beautiful game, but an ugly business." And I've seen that a lot, and especially with what they do to coaches. and the media too. It's um it's just savage, especially in this day and age of social media and X. Meech, that's what we call Dimitri. Meech had a tweet today. You know, what kind of cornball? You know what is this? He didn't say that he was fired, but somebody else had tweeted out. You know, some negative things about Tobin, and Meach was responding to those,
Yep.
and that's when but I didn't realize he was fired until I saw Jaden on your thing talking to you, and it's shocking that this would happen.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And that's why I think it just, I don't, I mean, and I said this earlier. I mentioned earlier that when we were struggling and we weren't doing well, we were, 4-10 or whatever we were, and the conversation started. He, that's when those conversations were probably going too far. Like it's one thing to say, "Hey, Dan Giroux, we're interested in you. Keep yourself free for a couple of weeks. We're gonna see how this goes a little bit, and then we're gonna give you a call if we feel like we need to make a move." Instead, it progressed not to contracts, but it sounds like there was some initial paperwork. There was an agreement in principle that he was going to get the job. And then, funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Tobin started winning a bunch of games.
Oh
So
wow! So
so
stuff was
I mean,
in place. Stuff was in place during the
it
season.
was, it wasn't official then. And my understanding, again, I've gotten mixed stories on this depending on who I've talked to. Nothing was official, but it was kind of a done deal. Like they were going to be ready to make the move when the season was over. The problem is that Tobin kept winning. And so that threw a wrench into their process, I guess. And now we're in a situation today where it just looks bad. Whereas if we just kind of petered out all year and we finished, 12-18 or whatever, nobody would have thought twice about it. It would have been like, wow, 2 years is a little short, but they would have understood. Well, it didn't work, but
Wow.
instead we had a great finish to this year. We were set up for next year and they still had to carry through with it. So I'm guessing some of the paperwork was a little more advanced to that where they might have had a problem getting out of it if they kind of backtracked on it. That's guessing. That's pure guessing on my part. But it obviously went far quickly, to get to the point where, I mean, they were basically entering the MAC tournament knowing that he wasn't going to keep his job, from my understanding. And this is not something I've known for a week and a half. This is something I've known for a day, maybe not even.
A day.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Like I heard this stuff like not that long ago. So,
yeah, I'm looking at this tweet now from him. It looks like it was 6 days ago or something. It's like Tobin Anderson, Division One hit wonder. It was from a Noah Biniak or something, who's a college baseball fortune teller, former NAIA baseball bench warmer. I don't know, but it's like massive kudos for winning as a 16 versus 1. However, know your place. You
yep.
didn't win your conference tourney, and something about audacity to chew out the FAU coach here. That's
Yeah.
what Meach was responding to, and I was like, what is this all about? I can't believe that they would do this to this man, and also be doing it behind his back.
Yeah.
But
Well, there was a lot of that. Again, there were a couple of people even on the Iona message board that kind of saw the writing on the wall. We're not surprised by this. I won't say they were rooting for it to happen, but they feel like it needed to. And there were certainly a lot of, even like, burner accounts that tweeted at me today, just totally negative about Tobin and
yeah,
just
I mean,
good
X,
riddance.
yeah, X
And,
is just
and
horrible.
that's, I mean, that's over the top. I mean,
They make
I,
stuff up and like
yeah.
screenshot things
So,
that aren't true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think, I mean, you're definitely saying you're preaching to a lot of people who I think feel the same way you have. It was just didn't make sense, and he certainly deserved the third year. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate your
Oh,
time.
I really appreciate you having me on.
All right.
Yeah.
Trying to get Gale Force on for the second time here. Let's see if this time it works. Let's see. Gale Force, give it a try now. And again, you may have to go in and select your mic so that it's. Oh, I heard something there. Try again. Hey, you're breaking up something fierce. No, you're breaking up. You're breaking up, buddy. I can't hear you. All right, I'm gonna get on Brian here. He's been waiting a while too. Brian is one of the regulars on the Iona message board too, so he's also been fired up today. So we'll see if we can get him on to share some thoughts. Brian, you should be able to speak now, I think.
Yeah, can you hear me, Guy?
I can.
Hey, I think the personal side of this is like what other people have said. You just feel really bad that he's not here anymore to kind of lead our program. To see, he felt it was kind of approaching a peak. And the big thing we talked about is just bringing players back, and it seemed like for once that was actually going to start happening, and they could roll this into something bigger. Obviously, the business side seems to be that, and this is what I'm hoping is, over the last 15 years, Iona's kind of been ahead of the curve with Cluse's recruiting. And then, a couple of years later, everybody's doing the transfer, getting transfers into their program, even when Iona was kind of made fun of at first for that happening. Then everybody started doing it. Hiring Patino, and, a couple of years later, he's kind of a hot commodity again once he gets cleared of all the stuff that he was cleared of. I'm hoping that they're kind of getting ahead of the curve, and this is what they feel like is going to be the new norm is, if they don't do this now, then they may not survive, or, I don't know, but, the landscape doesn't seem favorable to a team that doesn't have much money to pay their players. And without being able to sign these guys to like some kind of contracts of saying, okay, if you don't fulfill these years, you don't get your money. They're just using the program for a little bit to make some money, and then, kind of be like a minor league team and then move their way up. Is this the way of kind of getting to the forefront and ensuring that we have enough money to not only pay top players, but keep them here? And the whole stuff that you were saying about maybe moving a conference, I mean, that doesn't really make much sense to me, because I'm under the impression that you have to move all the sports, not just basketball, right, unless you get like some kind of special, I think there was a team last year that got kind of a special, it's like Gonzaga was maybe able to do that, just for basketball. But that doesn't seem like it's going to be a possibility unless, they can move all the sports.
Well, that's true too, and that's the big investment that Iona would have to make in order to make any kind of move. Because, and if you go to the A10, you go to the Colonial, and the old Colonial, sorry, the Coastal. Now, you're talking about longer road trips for more teams, and that's just more expensive to run your programs. So
right, and the guys that are the big boosters, I mean, they're aware of this. I mean, like I would think they would be.
So. Yeah. I do like the point you made though about, we've been ahead of the curve a long time, in terms of, it started with Tim, like just a D2 coach, or that everybody was kind of like, huh, when we brought him in, and he had this guy named Jared Grasso next to him. And next thing you know, they were, building a team that was good enough to get in that large bid. So, and then, doing it in a way that the rest of the MAC was very critical of. Siena fans more so than anybody. Look at all the JUCOs. Look at these transfers with these backgrounds and skeletons in their closet. The Iona is just like, hiring mercenaries at this point. And now that is basketball, is everybody's getting mercenaries. So,
right.
And so, maybe we're getting ahead of it here with the whole, let's get an NBA assistant and a more of a financial mind as our head man, as opposed to just getting a GM. And maybe it's going to work out. Maybe, and they're going to funnel money into this, and we'll bring in players that we're all going to go ooh and ah over. And the guy has some semblance of an X and O's ability to teach it to kids that age. We're going to go out and, win 20 games without thinking about it, and maybe more, or maybe a lot more. And that's fantastic if it all works out. But what if it doesn't? And that's
Yeah.
where I keep coming back to is what if it doesn't?
I
So
just
we
have
won't know
just one more point. I mean,
Yep.
you kind of always kind of held us in check on, online and in the, on the Iona message board. The fact that they're kind of, pushing all their chips into the middle of the table to make a move like this. Do you think it will kind of change the way that you cover the team and kind of keep us in check to say, hey, if the guys who are running the program are going to be delusional, I can't call you guys out for doing it anymore.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point because I've always tried to be that net neutral thing that we're not some again special program with fairies and pixie dust, and we're not preordained to be the best team in the MAC every year for all of eternity. But at the same time, we have the best history in everybody in the MAC, so we should expect to be at or near the top every year. So I still that's the middle ground. This ups that game though. So, I mean, we can't go in saying we expect to be one of the best teams in the MAC. If we're going to have this much more money than anybody else, if we're making this kind of commitment to Iona basketball, where we're making moves like this, we have to be the top program in the MAC, especially where the MAC is now. This isn't the MAC that used to be rated in the teens in KenPom. Now this is a MAC that's 27, 26, 25 every year. And here we are now with mid-pack teams in our league going to Dayton, which never was the norm in the past. It just didn't happen. So it's a league that if we're going to make a commitment and we have to dominate right away, or people are going to say, what are we doing here? This was stupid. So.
I agree. Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bri. Talk to you.
Yep.
All right. Gonna have a couple more here. I don't know you guys, so I'm going to ask you to behave yourselves. And let's be respectful of our program as we get you on here. We're going to start with, hold on, lost my cursor. Wait a minute. Where'd it go? There it is. Let's start with Quailman. Let's keep the comments kind of brief if we can. And we'll try to get through these last couple of guys. And then I'm going to close this out so we can move on and people can go over to hear what Curry Hicks Sage has to say. Cause I'm sure, and I probably will join that one too and see what's going on over there. Quailman, Timothy Bieber, go for it.
Hey, yeah, just had a quick comment. I just find it like, if you're in March and you find yourself like rooting, and I know it's kind of speculation, but it kind of seems like the decision was made, and it seems like if you're rooting for your team to lose to create better optics to fire a coach, like you're just like in the wrong, you kind of joined the wrong camp. It's kind of the only thing that I had quickly wanted to say.
It's true.
And this one to touch back on an article that I think it was like a week ago where Tobin mentioned that he wanted to come to Iona because they know they want to win and they have a history of winning. Curious if like that those comments in light of him getting fired, like was that kind of him maybe like a last ditch effort to save his job hearing the rumblings?
Could have been.
I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah. That's a good question. I know Tobin well, but I have not talked to him about this specifically. So, I actually don't know what he knew or did not know going into the weekend or the last couple weeks of the season or anything. We exchanged a couple texts today. He did express surprise that this all happened. And maybe he felt like he did enough for them to kind of rescind anything that they were thinking of doing. I don't know, but and somebody else brought it up earlier. It's a valid point. You have to wonder again, just because of the optics of it. Not that, again, I don't think it's that the president or certainly not the AD were rooting against us to win, but it did make it harder. And again, it would have been even more challenging if they had won. And it would have made, then you have to start asking yourself, are we doing the right thing here? And maybe that would have been a very interesting decision. And I would love to have been in the room for any final convos that would have happened had we been like getting ready to play in Dayton right now. Like, okay, what are we going to do in a week and a half when we're out of this thing?
For sure. Especially when you have like a backcourt committed to coming back who's already, top of the MAC with a 4-star recruit coming in. And I'm a Manhattan fan. Like I have no interest in Iona being good except for, I want the MAC to be good. It's kind of a shame to see, like, to kind of hear the expectations of like where we are and with our conference and the strength of our conference being like, you guys are in such a good position that so many teams would kill to be in. It's insane. The consistency year over year. And it's like, 27-5 is coming hope, but it's like, man, gotta temper some expectations, it feels like.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the thing too, is that the thought with Reeves coming back that would kind of be a springboard. It's hard to say on Jai, but certainly Mundi and a couple of these other guys would have been inclined to come back too. And if you
For sure.
bring back that core, you're in great shape. And I've kind of asked this question. If Jai had kind of come out right after Reeves and said, yeah, I'm coming back too, would that have changed all of this? I don't know. It's impossible to know, but from what I've heard, it feels like the answer to that is still no, which is insane to me. But that's why I feel like this happened sooner than it should have with with any kind of paperwork. Discussions, absolutely. You have to get ahead of it. You have to get ahead of the curve. The portal opens up in a few days. You need to have a replacement coach ready to go if you were going to make a move. But they just, and it's funny, if they had just not had those conversations for like 2 more weeks, none of this would have happened probably, because they were winning games by then. So at least I don't think so. I can't say for certain, but I don't think so. So I don't know.
Let me just say thanks for all you do covering the MAC. The spaces are always great.
Oh, appreciate you. Thank you for that. All right, let's go on. We've got a couple more. Every time I try to wrap up, another person jumps in. Tom Petropoulos has been waiting for a bit, so I'm going to get you on, Tom. You should be able to chime in a moment. All right, Tom, give it a try.
You guys, can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
No, you got it. It was great to hear from Paul Snyder, too, from the Montauk Sun. He got some great knowledge on Iona.
Yep.
But here's what I'm, when you read about it, the only thing you get is, hey, with the NIL, changing things in ways we never predicted, we have to change our entire business model, right? How does that connect to a head coach? Isn't that an NIL GM? Isn't that because you're already winning, so you got that part down, right? Now we just need better players to win more, right? So the only thing that says to me is we're bringing in the biggest profile name better than Patino or something, right? Like what? How does that justify the fire is what I'm trying to say. That the business model, the NIL.
Right. I don't get it. Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the belief is that Tobin didn't handle the NIL aspect of the job very well. And I say that without any real details to add to that.
He went to the MAC finals. So let's just say, how about next year we'll retool.
Well,
what do you want?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier, is that if that was I don't know if it was the biggest issue, but it was an issue. And then if that was an issue, just, get him a GM that he agrees with, and then just keep going.
It just seems like a lame excuse, really. You're right. All that winning that was being done. He was already fired with 5 games to go, and then he started winning.
In essence, yeah. It sounds like they went, and that's what I'm saying. The conversations in January, hearing about that, didn't bother me. And as a matter of fact, I would expect it that they would reach out to somebody. Let's say it was Dan Giroux. I know there's other people's names there are other names that were involved at the time. And you have those conversations and you say, hey, Tobin's struggling. We're not sure if he's going to be our answer long-term. We'd love to talk to you as this season progresses. And if we're contemplating making a move, that is absolutely what you should be doing at that point. Right. Taking it to the point of starting to do any kind of paperwork that makes it more official was a little premature, because it just assumed that there was no chance of a turnaround, even though there were enough people that said, hey, the MAC stinks. I hate to say it, the MAC is not very good. It stinks. Iona's just has to improve a little bit, and they're going to start to run through this league. What happened? They improved a little bit, and they started to run through the league.
Exactly.
So it's unfortunate. I don't think it was done with bad intention. I think that they just made an assumption they shouldn't have made about
overthinking it. How about this? No disrespect to the program at all, but you're not Indiana.
Yeah.
You're Iona. You're 1-16 in NCAA play. So you got the best possible coach right now. There are some big time programs that would love to have him. And then you think that the NIL is set up to where this guy is not cut out for it? How? Why? The NIL is basically a year old. It's crazy. It's ever changing. It's morphing into some crazy stuff, but there is no successful model right now.
No. And
You know, I
that's
mean, are you
why,
telling me that Rick Pitino is doing so well only because of the NIL? No, the guy's a great coach.
yeah, no question. But yeah, and it does.
And so is so is Anderson. So,
Yeah.
you know, and not only that, you could throw a big dollars in front of a lot of kids. They're not going to come to Iona if that's the kind of organization that
Yeah.
they're portraying. Basically.
Well, and right. And that's just it. The culture has to be right. And again,
Yeah, right.
I don't know if they're making a long-term commitment to Tangelo. Do you say to him, hey, no matter what, we're going to give you 5 years? I don't know if they would do that with the money at stake, but you almost want to do that because it's not just building a team and getting some wins. It is building a culture, and you have to have time to do that. And so,
right. And right now the culture is at an all-time low.
The culture just went to the crapper. Yeah.
Right.
So we're
right.
starting.
But
We're
like
starting.
One of the last callers said.
Say again.
Yeah, I wish him luck, though. I wish him luck.
Yeah. Really well, same. So, Tom, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Let's see. We also have. All right, Sean. I'm going to butcher how you say your last name, but I'm going to say it's Heppies or Heppis. But I'm approving you to join right now too, and I think you may be our last person. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if we can get you on here. Try now, Sean.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to share just a personal anecdote about Coach Anderson. I'm a young coach myself. I've known him since I was 16, coaching CYO in Orange County with my dad. He's been nothing but great to me. I want to get into coaching. We've met at a clinic, and one of the questions I asked him was, how do you balance the coaching with the family aspect? And no one's ever given me an answer quite like he has. He just straight up told me, he's like, Sean, I get to see my son Bryce. I get to see him run cross country. I've lived in the same house for the last 10 plus years. When I was at Stack, FDU, now Iona. He's like, he's been nothing but helpful to me. All the guys at Iona, Ray, Pat Buckley, the GA over there, Tom, Cam, Kyle, everyone over there has been absolutely great to me. And it's just sad to see that such a great group of guys gets ousted the way that they have. You know what I mean? After I don't want to say turning a program around from the last year, but I mean, it's kind of what they did. They had a whole new team, right? And to be honest with you, between Menard, Adam Jai, and Dede Reeves, I think they have the best backcourt in the MAC.
Yep. No doubt. I think, what if you were to ask somebody who was, say, among the trustees, they're still looking at big picture, and big picture is they were under 500 last year. They ended 500 this year. They had a couple of guys who flaked out and cost them NIL dollars. There were some other, drama here and there, I'm sure. And again, knowing the direction the finances were going to go and be a role in college athletics moving forward, they wanted to change the model. I think it could have been done a little more gradually as opposed to, hey, we're going to drop Tobin and do this. But at the same time, I'm not the one making those decisions. And guys who are responsible for a lot more money than I'll ever be responsible for, are making that decision and think this is the way to go. It could blow up on our faces or it could work. I don't know. I would have still been absolutely fine if they said, hey, let's just postpone this whole thought for 1 year. And just let's see what Tobin does in year 3, which if I had a say in it, if I were one of the trustees, I would have probably argued that, that it's usually takes 3 years for a program to truly be established. So, I mean, that's just here, even Pitino in his 3 years, I mean, his first year was kind of whacked out by COVID. Second year, they lost in the MAC tournament, even though they had a great team. And the third year, they won a championship and, had a great performance in the NCAA game. And then he was in a limo to Jamaica. So, I mean, 3 years is what you're supposed to do. Yeah. Now that's changing because of the money involved, and that's a shame. And that's really what happened here.
Yeah. How big of an impact do you think, the Greg Gordon and James Patterson moves, with their early departures in the season, whatever the case might have been? I know their case may be a bit different. I know Greg Gordon just hit the portal yet again.
Yeah.
How big of an impact do you think that those two guys specifically had on his departure?
Gordon had a lot of impact in the locker room. He was very vocal. Jeremiah Quigley was very close to him. So when Gordon left, he did kind of say some bad things about the program publicly. And that I think influenced some of these kids because It's like, when the season ended and we weren't in great shape, but there's the same belief. Hey, if we can retain a couple of these guys, we got a couple of good pieces here. And, we were thinking more of JQ, of Aaron Gurn, maybe one or two others tops, and then going to the portal. And sure enough, JQ was one of the first one. He was very much influenced by Gordon and said, I'm out of here. And then he goes to George Mason and barely gets on the floor. And then the last guy, to his credit, was Aaron Gurn, who was the last person to enter the portal. And he's the one who actually did the best out of all the guys that left, at Hofstra. So yeah, I think the snowball effect of Gordon's impact and then JQ leaving triggered a lot of other guys to leave. Now, granted, a lot of those guys, I don't think they cared if they left, but you did lose the continuity. But the next thing you know, again, they're all gone. And so, the belief was with Reeves staying that they might get some of these other guys to stick around. And if you have a core of 5, 6 guys that are back, that changes our whole look entering next season. And they, and Day staying was the first piece of that. I don't know what would happen with Jai. Again, I've heard completely two different sides of the story from sources very, very close situation. I don't know the truth. Someday I'll try to talk to Jai and find out if he really had a choice one way or another. But I still believe that there's an outside shot that Mundi stays, cause the kid liked Iona, but he also liked Tobin. So we don't know where Tobin's going to end up and whether Mundi follows him. But Menard leaving stinks because the kid was coming on.
Great shooter, assist to turnover ratio, one of the best in the
Yeah,
MAC.
he had the best in conference games. He had far and away the best assist to turnover ratio in the league in conference games. So he would have been, and again, a freshman. So he would have been a better player next year. Day, of course, would have been next to him in the backcourt. That's a good start right there. And Mooney in the front, you're building around them and they would have been in great shape. It's too bad we didn't get to see it happen. So, Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guy. Thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, everyone, we are at almost 2.5 hours. I'm going to wrap. I actually, was pinged. I wonder if I think some people want to see what I have to say on Curry, Hicks Sage. He does the search season, #search season, space pretty much every night and gets hundreds of people at a time listening to him talk about all the coaching searches. And of course, today with big news, I'm sure he probably opened his show talking about Iona a bit. So it's a shame I wasn't on to hear that, but I'm going to try to get over there and see if he gets me on to share a couple of thoughts there. But I want to thank everybody who timed in here tonight. Appreciate you all. Stick with us, people. I know this sucks. It sucks for me. It sucks for Tobin. It sucks for everybody who was wanting to see what was going to happen next year. But those guys are great people and, they're going to land on their feet. We know that. And hopefully, we will see what this all means for Iona basketball down the line. We'll have another space, soon enough to talk about the future of this program and where we're going from here. Thanks for everyone for listening. And I'm going to try to end this now if I can figure out how to do it. Thanks a lot. See ya.